The wind is barely a breath, and the sky is a slow exhale of slate-blue clouds as you trudge through damp grass toward the lake. Lake Manitou, they call it now, but 1,000 years ago, long before maps and road signs and motorboats, it had another name. It's still whispered in the cedar groves, the Lake of the Spirit. The name rises softly from the bark, and the loam like steam from your morning tea. Mist curls over the surface of the water in milky tendrils trailing like fingers across the shallows. Your feet crunch through frost-glazed reeds, and a loon lets out a cry somewhere far off, haunting and thin, as though the lake itself just sighed. This is not the kind of place where you hurry. Here, even your thoughts wear moccasins and step softly. You're not alone, though no one walks beside you. There are footprints in the dew, not recent, not old either, heading the same direction. You follow without thinking, a habit here. You don't challenge the land's suggestions. A cluster of smooth stones marks the old path. You crouch near one, brushing frost from its top. There's a carved spiral, shallow and patient like the echo of an idea. The kind of thing someone did hundreds of years ago with no intention of ever explaining it. Historians still argue whether these stones mark territory spiritual nodes or were just really dedicated doodles. You prefer the mystery intact, like a wrapped gift you never open. Across the lake, the tree line rises dark and close. Pines and cedars crowd together like gossiping old women, huddled and knowing. You imagine them watching you, nodding, murmuring. There are stories folded into those trunks, pressed like dried leaves between pages of bark. You'll hear some, maybe, if the forest decides you're worth the breath. You've heard of the place, of course. Everyone in the village has, not just the name, but the stories. The ones only told when the fire burns low and no one's pretending they don't believe in spirits. A shimmering white fish with human eyes, a ripple that moves against the wind, the voice of a lost girl that answers back from the water when you whisper her name. You're not sure whether these tales are warnings, entertainment, or something in between, like bedtime stories that accidentally invite something to sit beside your dreams. A small canoe rests upside down near the shore, nestled in tall grass. You run your hand along the ribs, smooth birch lashed with sinew. It's not yours, but it could be. Everything here feels both deeply personal and somehow borrowed, like living inside someone else's memory. You glance at the lake again. It's still, almost too still. Not even the usual slap of fishtails or the hum of insects. A surface like polished obsidian reflecting the blank grey sky. Still water shouldn't make your heart race, but it does. And you know why. Everyone knows why. They say that beneath the surface, down where the light stops and the cold folds in on itself, something waits. Not in a menacing horror movie kind of way. No glowing eyes or fanged smiles. Just presence, watching, waiting, listening like an old teacher, tapping its fingers as you stumble through your lessons. You've felt it before, especially when you're alone. That sensation that your shadow just got heavier. That maybe the reflection in the water isn't quite yours, subtly wrong in ways you can't name. You told your older cousin once, he laughed, and said the lake spirits don't bother with people who talk too much. Keep quiet, he said, and maybe they'll think you're clever. You try to keep quiet now, stepping softly, breathing shallowly. Your fingers trail across a length of weathered driftwood. It's smooth as bone and curved like it remembers the current. A red thread is tied around one end, an offering maybe. or a warning disguised as one. You've always found it strange how offerings and warnings look so similar out here. A small splash breaks the silence, just one. You freeze, not a fish, not that rhythmic plop you expect. This one is too neat, too singular. You scan the surface. Nothing. Just the smooth expanse of water mist still curling lazily like the thoughts of a half-sleeping god. You wait. The silence after the splash is louder than the sound itself. It makes you itch between the shoulders. People in the village still perform the old rituals, quiet ones, dropping cornmeal into the lake, whispering names over bundles of sage. Dancers in porcupine quill regalia still step to rhythms older than ink. And every now and then, when someone disappears without explanation, when the fish all turn belly up for no reason, when a baby refuses to open its eyes, they remind each other that Lake Manitou is older than the village, older than their oldest story, and probably older than time. A dragonfly zips past your cheek, the only living thing moving fast. It buzzes over the lake, then halts. Suspended. Its wings beat furiously, but it doesn't move forward. Then it veers hard left and vanishes into the fog. Even the insects are confused today. Your boots reach the water's edge. The lake laps quietly at your toes, respectful but insistent. You crouch, touch the surface. It's colder than it should be, colder than the air, colder than logic. You bring your fingers to your lips. They taste like minerals and something else, something metallic like memory. You stand, but the sensation stays with you. There are stories folded into this place, sure, but some stories unfold. You step back from the water, letting your fingers dry in the slow wind. Behind you, the trail coils upward, rising just enough to offer a view of the lake's vast stretch. You climb it, careful not to disturb the soft moss that has claimed the stones like an inheritance. As you crest the rise, the mist parts for a moment and you see it fully. Manitou Island. A landmass not merely large, but larger than stories. The elders say that this island is the largest freshwater island in the world. And while that might sound like trivia pulled from a tourist pamphlet, it's one of the few facts that actually understates things. The island doesn't just sit on the water, it hovers in legend, layered with memories, old treaties, and things with feathers that never quite looked like birds. You walk into the forest beyond the crest. Pines rise like silent sentinels, their needles combing the sky. The air smells like resin and the faint promise of snowfall. Somewhere in the underbrush a rabbit dashes unseen but thunderous to your alert ears. The silence afterward deepens as though the island is mildly annoyed you noticed. They say this land belonged to the Anishinaabe before there were borders, and to the Odawa before people thought to write that down. They say the island chose them, not the other way around. And maybe that's the reason no one builds stone castles or giant statues here. You don't decorate a thing that already breathes, you listen to it. A birch tree leans toward the trail. Its bark peels in pale curls like paper, waiting for a message. You run your hand across it, gentle like petting a nervous animal. The tree gives nothing back, not fear, not welcome, just a soft rustle. Birch has always had that neutrality about it. The favorite of canoe scrolls and occasionally the spirits. It's practical and poetic, like your grandmother. Not far ahead, the forest breaks into a clearing, a shallow bowl of land with stones arranged in loose spirals. Not circles, spirals. As if whoever built them believed time wasn't linear or that destinations weren't as important as movement. A few flattened cattails and the remains of the fire pit suggest someone camped here recently. Or frequently, you can't tell which unsettles you more. Something glints in the leaves, a small charm made of copper and shaped like a turtle. You pick it up. It's warm despite the chill. You flip it over. No markings. You think of putting it in your pouch, then feel the weight of the lake behind you and decide better. You place it gently on the nearest stone. Let whoever left it find it again, or not. The trees begin to whisper, not wind, real whispering, just out of range of understanding, as if the island is reading from a book in a language you once knew in a dream. The sound rises with your heartbeat. You keep walking. Ahead, smoke rises from chimneys barely visible through the trees. The village. Long houses shaped like loaves of baked bark clustered around shared fires and stories. You see children chasing each other with sticks, laughing their bare feet, slapping the cold earth like it owes them warmth. You pass a man sharpening a blade, a broad one made from traded metal, not stone. He nods at you, but says nothing. A woman kneels by a drying rack, strung with fish, white fish, likely still silver with lake sheen. She's humming an old song. You recognize the melody. Everyone does. It's the one they sing when the nets come back empty. You approach a longhouse near the center. Smoke curls from its vent. The air smells like cedar and cooked squash. Familiar, comforting. Inside, your own mat still waits. Your own woven bag still hangs from a peg. You crouch by the fire pit and stir the embers back to life. They answer with a low, grateful glow. But even here, surrounded by the warmth of familiarity, something feels off. The village seems unchanged but quieter, as if everyone's waiting for something, not dreading, not quite hoping, just pausing. A small girl appears at the entrance, half hidden by a fur cloak, much too big for her. "Did you see it?" she asks. You don't need to ask what it is. She shifts from foot to foot, eyes darting like minnows. "The lake's too still," she whispers, like it's a secret you're not supposed to repeat. It's listening. You nod. You believe her. You step back outside, walking past the familiar shapes of baskets, pelts, and tools, resting against longhouse walls. A carved totem near the center of the village draws your attention. It's not tall, but it's old, really old. Its paint has faded and its features have softened with time. A bear, a snake, and a human face all stacked, with a sense of narrative you don't fully grasp. You reach out and touch it. The wood feels warm like the copper charm. A man nearby is tending a pot of cornmeal porridge. He gestures with his chin toward the lake. "She's being quiet," he says. "Too quiet." You offer a small shrug. He chuckles. "You don't fool her, you know. The lake, she knows who's afraid." You smile, then shiver, not from cold. The sky is softening to evening. The trees blur at the edges. The lake is out there, still vast and silent. Not empty. Never empty. But holding its breath. Waiting for something. Or someone, you perhaps. You sleep that night in the longhouse, curled under furs and bark mats, but it's not restful. Dreams come in fragments, flashes of silver water, the low drum of something beating beneath you, and a pair of eyes that do not blink. You wake just before dawn, the air around you still too still, as though the entire village is holding its breath. You rise and step outside. The world is caught in that blue-grey hour when everything feels like it's waiting for permission to begin again. The fire in the central pit has dwindled to glowing orange knots, and the ash spreads out like forgotten snow. A few figures stir here and there, quite alert, like they've also been kept company by restless dreams. You make your way through the frost-stiff grass toward the eastern edge of the village, where the smokehouses are strung with drying meat and fish. The air is sharp with brine and wood smoke, grounding you briefly. But even the smoke drifts differently today, curling sideways, unsure of its own weight. Beyond the village is the stream that snakes its way into the lake. You follow its narrow banks, noting the way the frost holds to the ferns a little too long. The water itself seems hesitant, slower than usual, as though reluctant to reach the lake. And then you see it, perched beside the stream, tucked into a natural dip. In the land is the longhouse you half remember from childhood. It's made from birch bark, like the others, but the bark here is darker, older, almost blackened. The door covering flaps lazily even though there's no wind. Inside, the smell is immediate and thick sage sweetgrass fish oil and something metallic. Not blood, not exactly, just the memory of it. Sitting by the fire is an old woman, her back curved like a bowstring drawn too long. She doesn't look up when you enter. She's stirring a pot with a stick carved with little animal notches. "You've grown," she says, voice gravelly and amused. "Your shadow got taller before your bones did. You blink. You know her, or knew her, or dreamed her." She was the one who used to speak in riddles during the story circles when the other kids would sneak glances at each other and try not to laugh. She never minded. Her words were never for them. She looks up now and her eyes are completely white, yet somehow more focused than sight should allow. "The lake's remembering again," she says. "It always starts this way. Quiet days, loud nights, nets that come up empty." You sit beside her, feeling the heat of the fire touch your cold legs. "People think time's a line," she murmurs, "but here it coils like smoke. What was done once will be done again. What slept will stir." She stops stirring the pot and points the stick toward you. "You heard it, didn't you? That thud like a drum with no hands." You nod. She smiles. It's not the first time. She reaches behind her and retrieves something wrapped in hide. She unrolls it with a reverence that makes your skin gooseflesh. Inside is a net, but not like the ones hung up to dry in the village. This one is delicate, too fine for fish. It's woven of something dark, maybe horsehair, no, too long, too soft. Human hair, braided and looped dark with age and memory. You lean back instinctively. "This was used the last time the lake grew hungry," she says, "to cast not for food but for truth. You don't ask how you cast for truth. You're afraid the answer will make too much sense." Outside, a gull lets out a strangled caw and then falls silent. A chill passes through you, the kind that comes from inside the bones. You help her roll up the net again, your hands careful not to touch the strands too directly. She nods approval, respectful fingers get better answers. On your walk back to the village, the sun finally peaks above the treetops. It's dull today, like it's been up all night worrying. You notice a group of fishers gathered at the dock. Their nets are stretched out across the grass, not a single fish in them. Again, "They're not coming," someone mutters. 3 days now, a younger man kicks a stone. Maybe they move deeper. An older woman just looks out across the lake. Or maybe they're being kept. You glance back toward the forest where the long house of the old woman waits like a closed mouth. You wonder if she already knows what's coming or if she's just reading the signs better than the rest. One of the children approaches you holding something cupped in small fingers. "Look," she whispers, "it came out of the lake last night." She opens her hands. It's a fish scale, but not silver. This one glows faintly golden with etched lines like tiny script. You touch it. It's warm. You ask where she found it. She points to the inlet near the cliff, the one they don't fish near anymore. You know the one. The place the elders avoid mentioning. The place no canoe is tied. You look again at the scale. Historians still argue whether the indigenous tales of water spirits, especially ones like the Mishibijia, the underwater panther, are metaphorical, astronomical, or literal. But here metaphor sometimes leaves footprints, and astronomical signs have teeth. You pocket the scale and ruffle the child's hair. You return to your longhouse, sit near the fire, and pull the furs tighter around your shoulders. You can still feel the net even though you never truly touched it. It's as if the strands of hair wove into your thoughts. The lake is not just water, it's memory. A kind of breathing stone that forgets nothing and forgives less. The next morning, the village awakens with the slow groan of caution. You step outside your longhouse expecting the usual stirrings, smoke trails, laughter from the children, the occasional bark from a dog sniffing around the fish racks. But today the air tastes different, like copper and cold pine, like something's decided to sit right on top of the quiet. You follow the path toward the lake again. Your boots crunch through frost that doesn't melt even in the touch of sunlight. There are people gathered at the shore staring out with expressions that say everything and nothing at once. One of the fishing canoes has returned, only it came back without its rowers. The canoe floats just offshore, bobbing slightly as if tethered to some invisible string. No one dares touch it. One brave soul, a boy of maybe 12, had tried to wade in to grab it earlier. But when his ankles touched the water, he stopped, cold eyes wide, and backed out like something pulled on his shadow. Now they wait. Not because they don't know what to do, but because they all do, and none of them want to be the one who does it. You step forward, not out of bravery, more out of obligation. The kind that creeps in when your name has been spoken by too many elders for you to keep pretending you're just passing through. The water laps against your boots. You feel the chill bite straight through the leather, but it's not painful, just purposeful. Like a handshake you didn't initiate. The canoe drifts a little closer. It's made of birch, curved perfectly, not a scratch on its hull. But something about it is, wrong. You peer into it. Nothing. No oars. No fishing gear. Not even wetness, oddly. Just a single copper pendant lying on the center slat, shaped like a turtle. You feel a prickle on the back of your neck. That pendant, you saw it yesterday. In the forest clearing, you left it on the stone. Behind you, someone gasps. You don't turn. Instead, you reach in, carefully, fingers brushing the pendant. This time, it's ice cold. You pull your hand back. The canoe drifts back of its own accord. Just a few inches, but enough. You look up to the sky, hoping for answers. The clouds today are low, like pressed fingers. A shadow crosses them just for a second, and your heart skips. There's nothing there when you look again. But you know what you saw, the flash of wings. Large ones. You stay at the shoreline as the others murmur behind you. The villagers are already starting to shift the story. The two fishers who never came back will be remembered by new names, the ones who listened too closely, or the brothers who fished without asking. The title changes depending on who's telling it, but the meaning remains: the lake has taken its tithe. That evening, the fire circle burns brighter than usual, not for celebration, but to hold the dark back a little longer. You sit with the elders, listening as they speak in the slow, curved sentences that take their time to land. One of them, a man with a face like sun-dried bark, tells the tale of a canoe that sank itself. Long ago, he begins, before even I had knees that worked. There was a man who thought himself cleverer than the lake. He made a canoe with no knots, no joints, not a whisper of flaw. He called it Nabam, perfect. He pauses to spit into the fire. You already know where this is going. The others chuckle, a low ripple through the smoke. He took his wife, his son, and their fish, all paddling, confident, arrogant really. The lake let them get to the center, then it opened. Not a wave, not a storm, just a silence. And the canoe folded in on itself, like birch, curling in flame. He looks around, the fire eyes catching yours. No bodies were found, but every year, one piece of that canoe comes ashore. Birch blackened at the edges, smooth in the middle. Just one. Never more. You swallow. It's a familiar tale, but tonight it lands heavier. Later, curled under your sleeping furs, you hear something. Plunk. Just once. You sit up, heart pattering. You wait, breath shallow. Nothing. Then a second sound, but not water. Not on the longhouse. From beneath it, you rise, stepping lightly over the slumbering forms of your kin. Outside, the moon is cracked behind a veil of mist, casting half shadows across the village. You crouch beside the base of your longhouse. Nothing stirs. Then, a whisper, not in words, just a sound, like something breathing against the earth, as if the ground is not solid here, as if something under the soil is listening too. You stay still, very still. Eventually the whisper fades. You return inside. You don't sleep. At dawn you go back to the lake. The canoe is gone, but there's something new in its place. A trail of wet footprints leading from the water into the forest. Barefoot, human, except for one detail: they're too long. The footprints glisten in the morning light, stretched and narrow, pressed deep into damp moss, as though whoever or whatever made them wade more than they should. They snake from the lake's edge, past the place where reeds part like nervous spectators, and disappear into the thicket of cedar trees that frame the path inland. You hesitate, not because you're afraid, though let's be honest, you're very much afraid, but because the trail feels less like an invitation and more like a dare. You take a step. The forest hushes. Branches shift slightly overhead, letting filtered light cast slow-moving shapes across the ground. The footprints wind past the spot where the turtle pendant had first shimmered in your hand. You scan the moss again, just to be sure, your own boots barely leaving marks in the frost-soft earth. But these prints, they remain sharp, undisturbed, and they don't skip or stagger the way a lost person's might. They are purposeful. They know where they're going, which, unfortunately, seems to be toward your village. You follow. The path tightens, weaving through undergrowth dense enough to snag your sleeves. The cedars lean in here, whispering in that almost audible hum they save for mornings when the lake's mood is unclear. A squirrel scolds you from above, but stops halfway through, suddenly unsure whose side it's on. Then ahead, you find something new. A small clearing ringed with 7 stones, not arranged like a circle, but more like an arrow pointing northeast toward the high ridge. In the center lies a bundle. wrapped in otter pelt, bound with red twine and pulsing faintly. Yes, pulsing. Not like a heartbeat exactly, more like breath slow and tidal. You crouch. You're no stranger to ritual objects. The village has plenty. Bone charms, spirit bags, talismans carved from antler and pipestone. But this feels older, raw, as if someone made it long before they knew what it was for. Just a compulsion shaped into fur and thread. You reach out and stop. Your fingertips tingle before you even touch it. A warmth and a whisper of air, not from the wind, but from within the bundle itself. You draw your hand back, uncertain whether it's protecting you or testing you. "Don't open it!" The voice snaps the stillness like a twig underfoot. You turn. An elder stands there, half hidden by the trunks. It's Matawi, the old keeper of fire stories. Her eyes are narrowed, not unkind, but wary. "You feel it, yes," she says, nodding toward the bundle. The breath, you nod. "That's not for now," she says. "That was buried for later. For when the lake forgets it was once a sky, you blink. That sounds like metaphor. Until it doesn't." She steps forward, and without hesitation picks up the bundle. It quiets in her hands. The pulsing fades. Her fingers stroke the pelt gently. "This was last touched when the stars changed," she murmurs. "The time when birds flew backward for a season and fish gave birth to frogs." You pause. "That actually happened." She shrugs. Historians still argue whether it was a real event or a ceremonial misrecording, but the world blinked, that much we know. "And the lake," it remembered. Matawi tucks the bundle into a woven bag. "Come, the grandmothers have called for the circle." Back at the village, smoke rises more quickly than usual from the chimneys. There's a tension electric and low, like the sky is waiting to rumble. The central fire has been relit. Grandmothers sit in their circle, shoulders dusted with the white ash of past councils. You take your place just outside, as is custom, your presence not questioned, but also not quite acknowledged yet. Matawi steps into the center and places the bundle down. One of the grandmothers leans forward and speaks, not in full words, but in that sing-song tone that shapes meaning without grammar. The others hum low. The vibration rises in your teeth. You feel the lake again, not visually, not even with your ears, but in your bones, like a memory you didn't have until someone reminded you. They speak of the Mishibiju, the underwater panther, with scales and horns, a creature older than all names. You've heard the tales. A beast that guards copper veins, punishes greed, and stirs storms from the depth when people forget their manners. Some call it a metaphor for nature's retribution. Others, especially the quiet elders, do not wink when they speak of it. But now they mention something less familiar, Jibayanak, the underwater spirits, not beast, not ghost, but something in between. Shapeshifters, echo bearers, the ones who collect memories we toss into the lake like smooth stones. Sometimes, Matawi says softly, they send things back. Everyone is silent. You remember the footprints, you remember the canoe, you remember the whisper under your longhouse. One of the grandmothers looks at you suddenly. Her gaze is not harsh, just expectant. You sit straighter. Try to look like someone who hasn't been followed by dreams. She points a crooked finger. You went to the bundle. A statement, not a question. You nod. Quietly. Honestly. She nods in return. Then tonight you go to the lake. Alone. You open your mouth. Close it. There's no refusing this kind of invitation. Later, as the sun begins to fall in slow, gold lines across the village. You gather what little you'll need, a pouch of cedar leaves, a copper blade for ceremony, not defense, and your thickest fur cloak. The lake waits in its usual place, of course, still, vast, patient. But tonight it feels closer than ever, almost curious. You wait until the stars come out. They arrive shyly at first, just one, then another, flickering through the mesh of branches, like they're still deciding whether it's safe to be seen. You sit at the shoreline, wrapped in your cloak, the damp stones pressing against your thighs, the cool air nosing at your cheeks. The copper blade rests beside you, its curved edge catching moonlight. You haven't drawn any symbols with it yet. That part comes later, or maybe not at all. No one gave instructions, and somehow that's the clearest sign this is real. The lake is a black mirror. You lean forward, peer into the stillness. Your own reflection looks back, but slower, slightly off. Your head tilts, the reflection follows, but it lags just enough to make you blink. No wind, no waves, not even frogs tonight. Just the constant hush, the kind that says, "Pay attention," in the voice of an old teacher who knows you're daydreaming. You rise and step into the shallows. The cold grabs you like a handshake you didn't initiate. Your toes sink slightly into soft muck, and the sensation sends a ripple up your spine. You whisper an offering into the darkness, your own name, your lineage, and a promise not to ask for more than you're willing to return. Then you listen. Nothing happens. No glowing eyes, no tremors beneath the water, no spectral hands offering riddles. Just stillness. Deep, deliberate, and maddeningly neutral. But that's when you notice it. Not ahead, not beneath, but behind you. Footsteps, slow, wet, you don't turn. Every fiber of your body says not to. Instead, you close your eyes, breathe. The footsteps stop, the air shifts, and then you hear it. A breath, not yours, not animal. Something aquatic, but shaped like a sigh, as though the lake itself just released a memory through lungs it doesn't have. You open your eyes. The reflection on the water is different now, still your face, but not. The eyes are wider, the skin is darker, not by light, but by time. Your features but shifted, a version of you that might have lived here generations ago, or later, or never. The reflection smiles, you don't. The smile fades. You see it comes a voice. It's behind your ear, but not outside you. Not male, not female, just old and wet. You swallow. See what? The thing beneath the stillness. You blink. The water ripples once, just once, and clears. Now you see more than your reflection. The lake bed deepens unnaturally. A chasm opens where it shouldn't, and in that depth, a shape. Not quite beast, not quite structure. Horns curl backward like river reeds caught in a current. Its tail coils like it's made of smoke and muscle. Its scales shimmer with copper green and something your eyes can't name. It does not move, but it does not sleep either. The Mishibiju. You know it without needing to ask. A claw flexes slowly, then something stranger next to it. Smaller figures, not animals, not fish. Humanoid but blurred. Shapes moving just outside understanding. Watching, matching your gaze with tilted heads and stillness too precise to be human. Jiba Yaanak. Spirits of the deep. Historians still debate whether these figures were mythic archetypes of grief or just cautionary symbols of greed and loss. But seeing them now, you realize something no textbook ever captured. They are listening. The lake listens. And now it expects something in return. You kneel, water reaching your thighs, now your breath visible in the moonlight. You reach into your pouch and scatter cedar across the surface. The leaves float for a moment, then begin to spin, slowly forming a ring that pulses outward. You take the copper blade, its handle warm against your palm, and draw a line across the surface, not cutting the water, just suggesting. You whisper the old names, ones Matawi taught you when you were too young to know they weren't for games. From behind, a warm breeze brushes your neck. You turn. Nothing. But the forest at your back has changed. The trees are bent slightly, as if bowing or warning. You step backward out of the water. The surface settles, the reflection returns to normal, except now, when you look into your eyes, they seem occupied, not possessed, just visited, like something peeked inside, took a few notes and left the door slightly ajar. You dry your legs and return to the shore. The blade goes back in its pouch. The cedar ring dissolves. You glance up at the stars again. A few are missing. Not behind clouds, just not there. You count to be sure. 3 are gone, as though something beneath the lake borrowed them for its ceiling. You return to the village without speaking. No one asks what happened. No one needs to. But that night, no one dreams. Not a single person. The next morning, the fish nets are full. Smoke curls upward from breakfast fires the way it always does, spiraling lazily into the pale morning sky. Villagers move quietly, not in fear, but in reverence, as though everyone understands that something has shifted. Not dramatically, no great floods or beasts, but subtly, like a house rearranged while you slept. You notice the difference even if you can't name it. The fish nets are full. Overflowing, actually. Silvery whitefish and lake trout glisten in the sunlight. Bellies, rounded eyes, glassy. Everyone gathers at the lake shore, trying not to sound too relieved. But you can feel the mood gratitude, yes, but also unease, as if the fish are not just a gift, but a returned debt. Atui stands silently by the largest net, her fingers moving through the fish, not selecting, but listening. They remember, she murmurs. You know what she means. You don't ask for more. As you pass her, she leans in slightly. You'll find the wood today, she says. No further explanation. You don't need one. You head toward the grove at the edge of the village where you gather firewood. It's a daily task, mundane and grounding, perfect for pretending things are normal again. You walk past children laughing over smoked fish, elders sharpening tools, and a hunter mending a broken bowstring. The village hums as if nothing's happened, but the song is slightly out of tune. The cedar grove is quiet. The air is thick with sap and shadow. You pick your way through the trees, gathering fallen branches, stacking them under your arm. And that's when you spot it, a length of split wood longer than your arm, half buried in the moss. You kneel. It's smooth, almost polished. The grain curves in swirls, but not natural ones. These are markings, burned into the bark, not with fire, but with time. Tiny shapes form lines, then words maybe. You can't read them, but your skin recognizes something in them. You pick it up. It hums. Only slightly. A low vibration like a memory wrapped in timber. You test it for burning. You snap a small branch and place it in the center of a ring of rocks. You light some bark beneath it. The flame catches. Burns bright. Then, the wood begins to sing, not loudly, just a high, keening note that drifts up into the air and hovers. You look around. No birds, no squirrels. Even the wind seems to stop to listen. The flame doesn't touch the wood. It dances around it as if uncertain whether it has permission. You smother the fire. The note fades as if it had been waiting for your signal. Back in the village, you bring the wood to Manitou. She doesn't touch it. It chose you, she says. It doesn't want to burn. It wants to speak. You wait for her to explain. She doesn't. Instead, she tells you about a legend not often shared, one not meant for children. There are some trees, she says, that grow on top of buried truth. Not bodies, not bones, truth. That wood, when split, will sometimes carry the memory of what it grew over. That's why we don't cut certain trees. And you glance down at the piece in your arms, it hums again, very faintly. So, what do I do with it? She smiles. Ask it nicely. That night you sit by your longhouse fire, the wood propped beside you. You hold your hand near it. The heat of the flames pulls a faint glow from its surface, like the memory of lightning trapped in the grain. You whisper to it. Nothing happens. You whisper again. Still nothing. You laugh softly. Worth a try. Then the wind shifts. Smoke from the fire blows toward the wood and is absorbed. The wood darkens, then lightens again. It drinks the smoke, and then the air shivers. You hear a voice. Not from outside, not in your ears. Inside the wood, low, rhythmic, like a drum with language. Not in words exactly, but meanings, visions, a canoe floating in fog, a young woman standing on the lake, a copper blade rising from the shallows, and then a cavern beneath the water where walls breathe and songs curl along the ceiling like vines. You blink. You're still sitting by the fire, but your mouth is dry. Your hands are shaking. The wood is silent now. Manitou finds you the next morning. Her face is grave, but not surprised. It sang to you, you nod. Good, she says. Then it's ready for the lake. You want to ask what that means, but somehow the question won't come. You look down at the wood. It doesn't hum anymore, but it watches. You carry the wood to the lake at dusk, not in your arms on your back, bundled in cedar wrappings and slung across your shoulders like a burden both sacred and strangely personal. The villagers see you go, but none call out. A few bow their heads slightly as if mourning something that hasn't happened yet. One child hums the same tune the wood sang by the fire, her voice thin and untrained, but the melody unmistakable. The lake is waiting. Of course it is. It always is. You reach the shoreline just as the sky bleeds into its bruised purple dusk. Clouds hang heavy like wet cloth, stretched low over the water. The surface remains still, so still you could use it as a mirror if you dared to look. But you don't. You untie the cedar wrappings and kneel, placing the wood just at the lake's edge. The water doesn't touch it yet. It lies there like an offering in progress, not quite ready to be claimed. And then you hear it again. Thump, soft, from the deep. Thump, thump, like a drum, but far beneath, like something knocking on the underside of the world. You've heard it before, but this time you feel it in your knees. You place both hands on the wood. It hums again, warmer this time, like it recognizes you. You breathe in, then out, and you begin to sing. Not in words you know, not even a melody you planned, just a sound from the back of your throat guided by the air, the lake, and something older. A chant with no name. The wood vibrates in your palms. A ripple spreads from its base, finally touching the water. And then you hear something answer. Not a song, not a scream, a drumbeat. A low, deliberate rhythm from beneath the lake bed. 4 beats, then silence. then 4 again. It isn't your imagination. The water shivers. You look down and the wood begins to glow, not firelight. Something internal, like it's remembering itself in front of you. Then suddenly a figure steps from the water. You don't move, neither does it. At first you think it's a villager, a fisherman who walked too far into the lake. But as the figure draws closer, you realize it's not quite human, not monstrous either, just off. A little too tall, limbs a little too fluid, skin like bark soaked in silver, and the eyes glowing softly, like someone held a candle inside each one. You stand. The figure doesn't speak. Instead, it extends a hand, not to you, but to the wood. You hesitate, then lift it carefully. The moment the wood passes from your hands into the figure's, the air changes. Warmer, sharper, quieter. The figure bows, not deeply, just enough, and turns. It walks back into the lake. But here's the strange part: the water never ripples, it just accepts. Within seconds, the figure is gone. The lake resumes its perfect stillness. Not a single leaf stirs, not even the wind. You remain there, rooted. The wood is gone, but the drumbeat remains. You hear it now, not below, but behind. You turn. In the trees, something glows. You walk toward it, heart ticking like flint. And there in the forest clearing you thought you knew is a circle of elders gathered silently. Manitou stands at the center, holding something wrapped in hide. She looks up, smiles. He returned it, she says. She unwraps the hide. It's the same wood, but now it's different. Carved, marked with new shapes, ones that shimmer in the torchlight, not just symbols, instructions. You reach out and again the wood hums, but this time it speaks more clearly. It sings of protection, of balance, of agreements so old they've become instincts. One of the elders speaks voice like gravel in the rain. When the lake forgets, we remind. When the deep stirs, we listen. This is how we continue. You hold the wood to your chest. It is light, but it carries everything. Later, alone by your longhouse, you lie on your back, staring at the sky. The stars blink softly and far off, so faint you almost miss it. You hear the drumbeat again, not warning, not threat, just a rhythm, a heartbeat beneath stillness. And you understand now the lake doesn't sleep. It waits, it listens, and sometimes it sings back. You wake before dawn, not because you're cold or restless, but because something calls you, not aloud, not even clearly, just a tug beneath your ribs like a thread, gently tightening. You sit up, slowly, the furs falling away from your shoulders, and listen. Nothing, which is exactly what's wrong. No birds, no footsteps, not even the creak of wood or whisper of wind. Just silence. You slip outside. The sky is the pale grey of early morning, yes. Morning, not morning, because the air feels like it's remembering something terrible. It promised never to repeat. The lake still glimmers in the distance, and a low mist hugs the shoreline like a secret trying to hide. You walk quietly. The village is still asleep or pretending to be. One of the dogs lifts its head as you pass, then flops back down with a sigh that sounds a little too human. You pass Manitou's longhouse where a faint glow flickers inside. She's always up early, but today she doesn't come out. You suspect she knows where you're going. The trail to the water feels longer than usual. As you approach, you notice something strange. Tiny impressions in the soil, not quite footprints, not quite animal tracks. Clawless, narrow, evenly spaced, and disturbingly deliberate. They lead to the lake. You follow. At the water's edge, something catches your eye. A stone, Perfectly smooth, perfectly round, sitting atop the shoreline moss like it belongs there. But it doesn't. You pick it up. It's warm. Humid somehow, like it's been resting inside something alive. There's a single groove running down its middle like a closed eye. You set it back down, gently, and that's when you notice the ripples. A single set, not from a canoe, not from a duck, from beneath. They spiral outward in slow, perfect concentric rings. You crouch, peer in. At first you see only your own reflection, still shaken from sleep, still wearing yesterday's questions. Then you notice something just behind your mirrored head, another shape, elongated, sinuous. The reflection shifts and you remember the stories of the Mishibiju, the horned water panther. Some said it had scales of copper and claws sharp enough to tear memory itself. Others claimed it simply was the lake. Not something in it, but the force behind its stillness, its wrath, its gifts. You lean closer, and then you see them. Teeth. Dozens of them barely visible under the surface. Not from one creature, but many, curved upward like the jaws of fish long dead, like offerings set in silt. Your heart ticks louder. You step back, but nothing follows. Instead, a faint vibration tickles your feet. You crouch again, and now you hear it, a drumbeat, not from beneath, from within the stone you just touched. You lift it again, press it to your ear. Badum, badum. Steady, unnatural. You think briefly about hurling it into the lake, but instead you pocket it, because that's what people like you do when something mysterious knocks politely. You let it follow you home and pretend it won't whisper in the dark later. As you walk back, the mist thickens, and then midway up the trail you hear a sound that doesn't belong. Laughter? But not the cheerful kind, more like a gurgle wrapped in a giggle, like something trying to mimic a child's voice through water. You freeze. The laughter stops, the mist parts slightly, Waskeet, and there it is, a fish, hovering in mid-air, just a few inches above the ground, suspended like it forgot gravity. Its gills pulse once, its eye swivels towards you, then it drops soundlessly into the ferns. You don't move, because what does one even do when physics starts playing games? You wait. The mist thickens again. You resume walking. Back at the village, Matawi is waiting outside her longhouse. She says nothing, just nods. Her gaze falls on your pouch, the one with the stone, and then meets your eyes. He gave you a tooth, she says quietly. You blink. A tooth. She nods. The Mishibiju. It's how he remembers those he's touched. He keeps one of their teeth. And sometimes, if the story needs you again, he gives it back. You open your pouch, slowly. The stone feels heavier now. That's no pebble, she says. That's a promise. You look toward the lake again, still. But you understand now. It's not just water, it's not even just memory. It's a library of every truth no one was brave enough to write down. And now you're holding a bookmark. You sit by the fire that night, stone in hand, listening not to the crackle of flame, but to the gaps between them, the hushes, the silences, the breath the fire takes before it speaks again. The tooth stone lies warm in your palm. You try not to imagine it nestled in the jaw of something immense and ancient beneath the lake. Instead, you study it like a question you're not quite ready to answer. You trace the groove running along its back. It feels too deliberate, too clean, too intentional to be natural. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a signature. The old women gather in the smokehouse that evening, not for food, not for counsel, but for singing. The song. You know the one. It's only sung when the nets go empty too many times or a child sees something that leaves them quiet for days. It's a song to calm the lake. You follow the sound quiet and low as if it's trying not to wake anything. You sit in the doorway just close enough to hear the full weight of it. The grandmothers sing with voices like wood smoke, raspy and ancient, rising and falling like the waves the lake used to have. Their hands move in patterns over their laps, weaving invisible nets with every syllable. No instruments, just voice and time and memory. You close your eyes and the tooth warms. It's subtle at first, a pulse, a flutter. Then a steady heat, not enough to hurt, but enough to feel like a message. You grip it tighter, and suddenly you see her. A girl maybe 10 winters old, standing at the edge of the water. Her hair is soaked, her dress clings to her legs, and her eyes are hollow. No, not empty, too full. Of the lake, of its weight, of its memory. She lifts her hand, slowly, points behind you. You open your eyes with a gasp. The singing has stopped. The grandmothers stare at you. Manitou speaks first. You saw her? It's not a question. You nod. She nods back. Then you're ready. You want to say you're not. Desperately. But you stay silent, because something in your chest has begun to hum. Not from fear, from recognition. Later, Manitou tells you the full story, not the version for children, the real one. There was a girl, she says, a long time ago, born during the last eclipse of the twin moons. That's what we called it. You'd call it a night with no stars. She came out silent, didn't cry, didn't blink, just stared. Manitou's hands move slowly as she speaks, tracing patterns in the air, like echoes of the old dance. She grew, but she never spoke, never sang. Until one day she walked into the lake. You know how this ends. You want her to stop. She walked in up to her knees, then her waist, then her shoulders. And then she sang. You stare. What did she sing? Manitou shrugs. No one ever knew. Because when she opened her mouth, the water rippled outward, not just across the lake. Through the sky. Through time. And from that moment on, the lake began to listen differently. You glanced down at the stone again. She left that behind, Manitou says. They say she became part of the deep. A spirit, maybe. A bridge, maybe. A warning, probably. You sit quietly for a long time after she leaves. The fire burns low, the stone cools. You sleep, but the dream finds you anyway. You're standing in a long hall, wet stone underfoot, thick with the scent of moss and copper. The walls curve slightly like the ribs of a great fish. You walk forward. Each step echoes like a raindrop falling into a well. In the center of the hall is a bowl. Inside the bowl feathers, hundreds of them. Black, white, grey. They float upward, not fall. Float. Up against the air, rising like smoke in reverse. You reach out, and then you hear it again, the girl's voice. No words, just the tune. From the song, you wake gasping. And the tooth stone gone, vanished from beside your sleeping mat. You leap up, search the room. Nothing, but your door is open. Outside the moon is high, and from the edge of the trees, something glows. A single feather, floating upward. You don't run toward the feather. You walk, slowly, because something in your bones knows that running will only startle it. Or worse, invite it to run too. The feather drifts upward at the tree line, impossibly slow, caught in a breeze that isn't blowing. It hovers just above a crooked branch, spinning gently, as if unsure whether to ascend or return. You reach the tree. The feather stops and then vanishes. Not blown away, not carried off, just gone. You stare at the empty air a moment longer than you'd like, then glance down. At the base of the tree lies something else. Something solid. A carving. Not wood, not stone, bone. You crouch, brush away the moss and lift it gently. It's the size of your palm, worn at the edges, but unmistakably deliberate. A face. Human, sort of. One half smiling, the other half neutral, but the eyes, both sides, watch you with the same cold curiosity. You turn it over. On the back, faint etchings, spirals, waves, and a symbol you've seen before on the copper blade on the birch that sang even once on the pelt bundle Manitou unwrapped. It looks like a circle with a missing piece, a mouth maybe, or an open eye. A memory breaks through you like light through cracks, and you've seen this before. Not here, there. In the vision from the toothstone, the hall, the bowl, the feathers, the mask was there too, resting on the wall, watching. You close your eyes, and for a split second you are back there. The hall stretches before you, the feathers rise again, the mask waits in your hand. But this time when you look down, it breathes, just once, a shallow inhale. Then you're back in the forest, and the mask is warm. You wrap it in cloth and carry it with both hands like an offering. The forest parts for you cedars, leaning away ever so slightly. Squirrels watching with eyes a bit too human. When you return to the village, Manitou is waiting outside your longhouse. You don't say a word. You just hand her the mask. She nods slowly. "I hoped you wouldn't find it," she whispers. You wait, but it's time, she adds. The lake's beginning to remember too fast. Things are surfacing that were meant to stay in the deep. She unwraps the mask, turns it in her hands. "The two-faced one," she says. "It was once worn by the speaker, not a chief, not a shaman, something in between. They didn't tell stories, they carried them." She points to the smiling side. This is the part people listen to. Then to the neutral side. This is the part that listen back. You study it closely. Something strange is happening to the eyes. They shimmer, not reflectively internally, like they're full of something neither solid nor liquid. Is it alive, you ask? Manitou tilts her head, not in the way we are, but it remembers. She holds it out. You don't take it. "Put it on," she says gently. "Now, no," she says, smiling faintly. "In the water, of course, because everything ends up there." You nod. "Tonight," she says, "you spend the day preparing, not physically. You don't need gear or weapons or even torches, just quiet, stillness. When night falls, the village stays indoors. No one says good luck. No one offers you prayers. But they don't stop you either. That's their way of giving blessing without tempting fate." You walk alone to the lake. The moon is full, or close enough to pretend. It paints the surface of the water with broken silver. You carry the mask in both hands, like a baby that might ask you a riddle. At the shore, you undress slowly. Not out of ritual, but because the air demands it. You place the mask against your face, and then everything changes. Your vision splits. One eye sees the world as it is, the other sees something else. Shapes under the lake, lights above the trees, feathers that rise instead of fall. Your heartbeat slows. You step into the water, knee-deep, waist-deep, chest. And then with one final breath you submerge. The lake closes over your head like a door swinging shut. And down here, the silence speaks. The mask hums softly, and with each beat a ripple of vision explodes behind your eyes. You see the fish not as food but as messengers. You see the stones not as land but as memory. And then you see her, the girl, floating, eyes full, hair like river grass. She lifts her hands. You lift yours. The mask pulls forward slightly, and then she becomes you. Or maybe you become her. And for a moment you both exist in the same breath, the same stillness, the same sacred drowning calm. You are underwater and yet somehow not drowning. Your lungs should be screaming by now, but they aren't. In fact, you're not even sure they're working. You can't tell if you're breathing through your mouth, your nose, or through the bone-deep recognition of the lake itself. The mask holds firm against your face, yet it feels weightless, fluid, almost as if it's not on your skin, but within your skin, spreading like ink in water, like story through silence. The world down here doesn't shimmer or distort like it should. It sharpens. You see the lake bed stretch beneath you, not in flat sand and scattered stone, but in carvings. Long sweeping glyphs etched directly into the silt. Spirals, arrows, claws, and once again that circle with the missing piece, so many of them now that you feel surrounded by open mouths waiting to finish a sentence. You descend slow and steady. Not because you're pulled, because you belong. The water grows darker, but not colder. There is a warmth here, like the inside of an old drum, the heat of friction of story pressed against story until something wakes. And then you see it. Not all at once. It doesn't appear so much as resolve. The cavern. A hollow beneath the lake bed itself, wide as a village, domed like the inside of a great copper bowl. And it breathes. The walls pulse ever so gently, as though the stone itself is drawing in the lake and exhaling it as memory. The feathers are here too, dozens, maybe hundreds, suspended in the water. Black and white, thick and soft, rising slowly toward the cavern roof, caught in a current that moves in no direction. In the center of the cavern lies a platform, and on that platform a shape, coiled, massive, copper-scaled, horned, the Mishibizu. But it is not a monster. Not entirely. It is still. Eyes closed, breathing in long, ancient waves. Its form is beautiful and terrifying in the same breath. A cat-like head with twisting antlers, a body serpentine and muscular scales patterned like frost on glass. Its claws rest gently on the stone, not curled in menace but relaxed, like something deep in dream. You approach slowly. The mask hums again. A thought, not your own, presses gently into your mind. Why do you wear the face of both voices? It doesn't say the words. The meaning arrives like warmth through a closed door. You don't answer, you show. You press your hands to the stone and think of the nets that came back empty, of the girl who sang the lake into listening, of the stone that pulsed like a heart, of feathers that rise, stories that sink, truths carved into trees and whispered through bone. And then the Mishibizu opens one eye, just one. And it is not the eye of an animal. It's the eye of a storm that has been watching too long. An eye that remembers ice ages and birth cries, villages built and swallowed offerings made, and promises broken. The eye looks through you, then past you, and behind you the girl floats. The one with hair like kelp and a voice full of long-forgotten notes. She swims forward without swimming. Her eyes are your eyes now. And as she presses her hand to the Mishibizu's brow, it sighs. A sigh that vibrates through the cavern. The feathers lift higher, the stone platform glows with slow fire, and the mask begins to loosen. You reach up to hold it in place, but the girl stops you. Her fingers touch yours, and gently the mask falls away. It does not sink. It rises up through the cavern, through the water, spinning as it goes until it vanishes into the shadows above. The Mishibijiu closes its eye again, but before it does, a ripple of something approval, memory warning, passes through you like lightning beneath the skin, and then the cavern fades. You are rising, not swimming, rising, as if the lake itself is lifting you back, returning you to the surface, not as a visitor but as a message. You breach the water with a gasp. The moon is still there, the shoreline still quiet, the village still sleeping, but everything feels lighter, and yet heavier too. In your hand is something new, not the mask, a carving, smooth, wooden and small. The same face as the mask, two expressions, one smiling, one still. You step onto the shore, your feet leave prints that steam in the moonlight, and somewhere just beyond the trees you hear drums, not played, not struck, beating themselves, as if the earth is remembering how to sing. You walk back into the village with the carved face still warm in your hand. The wind has picked up ever so slightly, just enough to sway the tips of the cedar branches and lift the smoke from forgotten cooking fires. It smells of pine, damp earth, and something older, the scent of stone pulled from deep water. No one is awake. Or maybe they are and they've chosen not to interfere. You sense the difference. You pass the fire circle. The embers glow softly, untouched since the last story. You crouch beside them, not to stir the coals, but to lay down the carving. The earth hums under your knees. It accepts the offering. You rise, and then your ears catch it, just faintly, the sound of something moving. Not behind you, not beside you, within the trees. A hush that moves like an animal, like breath, turned sideways. You turn toward the inlet, the place everyone avoids, where the canoes don't go, where nets are never cast, where people change the subject before saying too much, and yet you go. The trail is narrow, the trees crowd tighter. The air here feels damp, but not unpleasant, just aware. You pass the tree with the red thread offerings. The bark is covered in tiny knots and tokens, feathers, bones, braids of hair, carved shells, a child's sandal, long-grown moss, all tied there, all unanswered prayers, or perhaps prayers too dangerous to be answered. At the water's edge, you pause. This is the inlet, the one called Zagijiwanong, the place where the water folds inward. It looks ordinary, but it isn't. Even the insects avoid this stretch. You crouch and place your palm on the surface. It's warm. You feel a current, slow, spiraling, not pulling outward into the lake, but curling inward, back toward the land, like the lake is drinking itself. You close your eyes and breathe. The current pulses once, then again, then you hear it. A voice, soft, close. Turn around. You do. And there she is, the girl. Hair soaked, eyes steady. She stands at the tree line barefoot, wearing a dress stitched from reeds, and something more delicate mist, perhaps, or forgotten breath. You're not sure. She walks towards you, but her feet don't bend the grass. She passes the tree with the red thread offerings. Not a single token stirs. When she reaches you, she doesn't speak. She just raises her hand and points to the inlet. You look. The water has changed. The reflection shows not you, but a place. Not a mirror, a memory. You see a canoe, older than any you've ever known, wider, ribbed with something that isn't birch. In the canoe, 3 figures, a man with a carved stick, a woman holding a bowl, and a child. The child is singing. The water begins to swirl around them. You watch, heart thudding. Then the image fades. You look back at the girl. She speaks now, finally. You must return it. You blink. Return what she points downward. You follow her gesture to the base of the tree. There, half buried in the roots, is a bundle. You dig, gently hands, moving through soft moss and soil. The bundle lifts easily. Wrapped in fishskin leather tied with cedar twine, it feels both fragile and impossibly dense, like it holds too many memories for its size. You glance up. She's gone. No footprints, no sound, only mist curling where she stood. You return to the village. Matawi is waiting, of course. She gestures to the bundle. You found the story? You nod. She opens it carefully. Inside is a fragment of canoe hull, curved and blackened with age. Burn marks trace symbols into the surface. The circle with the missing piece, the open mouth, the spiral. And another symbol you've never seen a fish swallow in a feather. Matawi holds it to her chest. We thought it was lost. She turns to you, but the lake never loses, it just waits. Later by the fire the elders gather. No songs, no drums, just silence. And then Matawi begins to speak. She tells the story of the inlet. How generations ago a family set out to carry a message across the lake. How they vanished. How their canoe never returned. Until now. The carving you found, the feather that rose, the mask that breathed, the stone that pulsed. All of it pieces of a memory too big for one person, too strange for one version. The lake, she says softly, wasn't angry, it was remembering. You sleep that night under the stars, but the stars don't shine, they blink, as if something large swims just beneath them, waiting to surface. The next morning arrives wrapped in hush. The village doesn't wake so much as stretch slowly, cautiously, like it's still uncertain if the day is allowed to begin. Smoke rises from a few fire pits, but it curls sideways, not up. Even the dogs pad quietly through the grass, tails low, ears tilted toward the lake. And there, at the center of it all, stands the tree. Not just any tree. That tree. The old cedar, gnarled and patient, sitting on the slight rise near the eastern shore. The one the grandmothers call Ga Ziuzan Mijakwat, the one who holds the names. It stands taller than the others, not because it grew faster, but because no one dared cut near it. It holds offerings tied with cloth sinew ribbon beads. Some are weathered to threads. Some look placed just yesterday. All of them dangle gently this morning, despite the stillness in the air. You approach it. You've passed this tree your whole life. You were told never to touch it unless you had a name to leave. Not your own, but someone else's. Someone gone. Today you carry no names, but the tree is watching. You stop at its base. The roots curl like knuckles. The trunk rises with deliberate curves, wide and solid as an elder's shoulder. Up close you see something you'd never noticed before. Tiny notches in the bark. Lines, marks. Aged and half swallowed by time, but clearly made by human hands. You crouch. The notches aren't random. They form shapes, 17 of them. You trace the first with your fingertip. A spiral. Then a feather. Then a canoe. You realize suddenly these aren't decorations, they're names. Not written in letters, but in stories. Each symbol is a life once remembered, then forgotten, then buried into bark. You rise and see something new, a strip of red cloth, fresher than the rest, tied tightly just above your eye level. The knot is perfect. The fabric still smells faintly of cedar smoke. You recognize it. You tied it. You don't remember when, but your fingers twitch with the memory. And just below that cloth, an empty space. Smooth bark. Waiting, you reach into your pouch, inside the carved face. The two-sided one now faintly glowing at the edges, as if it's still soaking in whatever story the lake poured into it. You hold it against the bark. It fits. Exactly. Not like it was made to be placed there. Like it was always there. You press, and for one breathless second, just one, you hear something from inside the tree. A breath. A long, slow exhale. You step back. The carving stays in place, fused into the bark as if it's been there for centuries. The air feels warmer suddenly, not hot, just acknowledged. And that's when you notice something strange. One of the ribbons tied near the base of the tree begins to untie itself. Slowly, with no wind. It falls to the ground, curling gently. You pick it up. It's old frayed, the color faded to pale rust, but a name is still stitched into it, not written in words, but sewn in symbols. You see the same circle with the missing piece. You see a feather. You see a hand reaching toward water. And in that moment, a name rises unbidden to your tongue. You whisper it, and the tree shivers, not violently, just enough, like something turning over in its sleep. You leave the ribbon at the base of the trunk. It doesn't matter whose name it was, because now it's carried. You walk back toward the village. The day unfolds, but not quickly. The fishers come to the shore, but don't cast their nets. The children play, but only near the center of the village. Even the dogs stay close today. You find Matawe by the smokehouse. She's stirring something in a pot that smells like pine needles and fire memories. I heard the tree breathe, you say quietly. She doesn't look up. She only nods. It always does. She murmurs, just not always where people can hear it. You sit beside her, both of you facing the lake. There's something heavy in the quiet. Not ominous, just old. Like the pause before someone tells you something true. After a while, Matawi says, when the names grow too many, the tree begins to lean. You glance back. The cedar stands perfectly straight, for now. She smiles, but it's always ready to listen again. You nod. The lake glistens in the distance. Still. For now, you rise before the sun again. Not because a voice calls you, not this time, but because your sleep is thin now, stretched too tightly across dreams you no longer control. When you blink awake, you still hear her humming. The girl from the water, the one who breathed feathers and wore moonlight like a dress. She hasn't left you. Not really. Outside, the sky is the color of raw flint. Blue hasn't arrived yet. The wind hasn't either. Everything is paused. You walk through the village with the rhythm of someone who knows the path but no longer trusts the destination. Your feet guide you toward the southern edge where the forest thickens, where you once caught rabbits in snares and carved faces into bark. But today you carry no traps, only curiosity and the faint throb of the old cedar's breath still caught between your ribs. As you cross the narrow trail where mushrooms cluster like whispered warnings, you see something strange. A beaver just sitting, not chewing, not building, just watching. It blinks slowly as you approach, but doesn't move. You pause, Because a beaver watching you at sunrise is not a common omen. And then it speaks, of course it does. I wouldn't go that way if I were you. Its voice is gravel and moss, not exactly male, not exactly anything. You blink, pardon the beaver, scratches its ear with one little paw. Not that you'll listen, none of you do, but that way leads to the bend where stories forget themselves. You should be alarmed, you really should, but you're more tired than surprised. What's there, you ask? The beaver sighs. A place that used to be a place, a mouth with no tongue, a road with no destination. Sounds like half the people I know. It snorts. Finally, one of you gets a joke. Then it turns and waddles away into the brush, vanishing like a leaf, curling in reverse. You stand there for a long moment, heart calm in a way it shouldn't be. Then you go that way, obviously. The trail leads you into a part of the forest you've never really noticed before, which is odd considering it's not far. The trees here seem older, gnarled, twisted, full of arguments they've clearly lost. And then you see it. A clearing. Perfectly round. Not carved, not accidental. Formed. At its center stands a post. Old, smooth, and bearing the marks of time, the way a grandmother wears beads proudly, stubbornly. Tied around it are dozens of small cords, braided twine leather straps, and something that looks suspiciously like dried grass, plaited with human hair. Each cord ends in a knot, but none of the knots are tied. They loop back toward the post, hesitant, as if waiting for someone to finish them. You crouch beside one, and then you understand these aren't ropes, they're stories, unfinished ones. Tales that began with names and dreams and promises, but never reached the part where someone says, "And then they came home." You recognize a few. One cord has a small fishhook tied at its end. Another holds a scrap of feathered quill. A third, just a ring of bark with the shape of a canoe burned into it. Each one a thread cut short. You reach into your pouch and retrieve what you now carry with you, always the carved face. The one from the mask, the one that watched you become part of the water. It hums slightly in your palm, as if remembering the inside of the lake. You press it gently to the post. No glow, no quake. But the knots tighten, all of them. Every cord on the post pulls into itself, drawing closer to closure. Not all the way, not a bow, not yet, but no longer loose. You stand dizzy with understanding. The post isn't a marker, it's crossroads. A gathering place for stories that refused to end. And you're the one who keeps stumbling across them. Historians still argue, you mutter to yourself, whether these sites were ceremonial memorial or just weird storytelling accidents. You chuckle. But the forest doesn't laugh with you. Instead, it listens. You walk back to the village with slow steps, heart thrumming like distant thunder. At the edge of the woods, Matawi is waiting. Of course, she always is. You saw the cords, she says. You nod. They tied themselves. She nods, satisfied. Good. The stories are starting to find their endings. You glance at her. And what about mine? Matawi smiles. Some stories aren't meant to end. She looks toward the lake. They're meant to be retold. Twilight bleeds slowly into the world, dragging long fingers of violet and blue across the sky, while the lake holds its breath beneath. You sit near the edge of the old dock, what's left of it. Most of the planks have warped, curled, or vanished entirely. Only 3 remain. 3 wide, worn slats that jut out into the stillness, like a question asked long time ago and never quite answered. Behind you, the village exhales gently. Someone stokes a fire. A dog barks, once then quiets. Children's laughter echoes briefly from behind a longhouse, rising like smoke, then gone. You dangle your feet just above the water, not touching it, not today. The lake is too quiet. Again, still water isn't supposed to make you nervous, but it does. There's a reason the elders whisper about the moments when everything goes still, when even the frogs fall silent, when your shadow lingers a second too long at your heels. You think back to what Manitou said. Some stories aren't meant to end, but lately you're starting to wonder, what if some don't even belong to you? What if you're just the mouth that speaks them, but not the ears that first heard them? A shape shifts in the shallows, just a ripple, probably. You lean forward and squint. The water reflects the fading sky, fractured by reeds. Then you see it, your reflection looking back. Same face, same eyes, but something's off. Not quite wrong, just delayed.
Like it's thinking before it moves, like it's deciding whether to mimic you at all. You raise one hand, so does it. Late, you smile, it does not. And then it disappears, gone. No splash, no sound, just gone. You stand slowly. That's enough lake gazing for one evening. You turn toward the trail and freeze. Your shadow is still sitting, still dangling its feet over the water. You stare. It doesn't move. Then after a breathless moment, it turns its head toward you. Your breath catches. You take a step back. The shadow rises too finally, but instead of following you, it turns around and walks out over the water. Its feet do not sink. They ripple. You don't run. You don't scream. You just watch, because that's all you can do. The shadow walks across the surface, heading toward the center of the lake, growing smaller with each impossible step until it fades into the gathering dark. You don't tell anyone when you return to the village. Not that night, not the next day, not even when Manitou asks, "Did you feel different this morning?" You simply nod and say, "I slept lightly." Because how do you explain a shadow with its own errands? A few nights later, you sit by the fire, alone. You hold a piece of birch bark in your lap and carve gently with a copper-bladed awl. Nothing complicated, just a spiral, then a line, then a canoe. Then without thinking, you carve a figure, a small one, shadow thin, walking on waves. You don't recognize the image until it's complete. And even then you pretend you don't. You roll the bark and place it in your pouch. Offerings like that tend to be found by exactly who needs them. A few days pass, the mist returns. A child says they heard someone whisper their name from the lake. No one laughs, no one scolds. A grandmother ties a new ribbon to the old cedar. You watch. Later you visit the inlet again, the one where canoes do not go. This time there's something new, a figure carved into the mud near the shore, just footprints, and a faint outline as though someone lay there for a while. Then rose. No drag marks, just the shape of a person who didn't stay long. You step closer and crouch. In the center of the outline is a single word pressed faintly into the silt. You don't recognize the script, but your bones do. You touch the letters. They pulse once. And suddenly you remember something you haven't yet lived. A voice, a story, a lake that remembers for you. You step back. The water stirs slightly, and behind you your shadow returns. You walk home without looking back. Not because you're brave, because you've learned that some things don't like being stared at too long. Your shadow keeps pace beside you, now properly tethered again, stretching across the dirt path like a child, sulking after being caught sneaking out. You don't speak to it. It doesn't apologize. But there's a quiet understanding between you now, like two people who've shared a secret they didn't choose. Back in the village, the fires are low and the air is thick with something unsaid. No one mentions it, but everyone knows there's a song playing over the lake. You can't hear it with your ears, not exactly, but it hums along the edge of everything, woven into the thatch of longhouse roofs, drifting between baskets of drying sweetgrass, tucked into the quiet between coughs and the scrape of tools on wood. It's a tune no one sings, but no one dares forget. You wake the next morning to find feathers on your doorstep, not left on it, embedded in it, pressed straight into the wood, as if the door had once been soft clay and a bird made of silence had walked across it. 7 feathers, no blood, no mess, just a pattern arched like wings mid-beat. You kneel and touch one. It crumbles instantly like ash. You glance around. No footprints, no breeze. You rise and open the door. Matoi is waiting, sitting cross-legged in the shade of your longhouse, like she's always been there waiting for you to notice. "Took you long enough," she says. You raise an eyebrow. "To do what?" "To see," she says. "You've been listening. But now you're beginning to see." She stands slowly, joints creaking like old bark, and walks toward the fire circle. You follow. Elders gather, so do a few of the children, the quiet ones, the ones who draw spirals in the dirt without realizing it, or who talk to corners like someone's answering. Matawi holds up a small bowl. Inside lake water and something pulsing faintly beneath it. A sliver of light, no bigger than a fish scale, but it hums. You recognize it. The same hum from the bundle wrapped in otter fur. The same hum from the birch wood that sang. The same hum that echoed in your chest when you stood on the lake bed and saw the feathers float upward. Matawi dips a finger into the water and traces a symbol on the ground, a canoe with no paddlers. Beneath it, she adds 2 dots. Eyes, spirits. You're not sure. This was seen, she says, by the boy with the missing shadow, by the girl who whispered to the tree, by the woman who watched her own voice return in feathers. Everyone looks at you. You feel it again, that tug, that thread tightening. You open your mouth to speak, and a sound escapes that isn't yours, not entirely. A note, high and thin and trembling, not a song, not yet, but the beginning of one. Matawi nods. It remembers you. Someone gasps. You look down, the symbol she traced now, glowing faintly. The dirt doesn't move, but the light pulses beneath it like breath, trapped under thin ice. The humming grows louder. Your feet itch, not from discomfort, from recognition. You realize something. You're not the one who's been finding these pieces. They've been finding you, drifting through time, memory, and silence, folding themselves around your voice, waiting for you to hum the rest of the tune. You step forward and crouch beside the glowing symbol. You touch it, and you see a boy pulling a fish from the lake, only to find the fish has no eyes, a longhouse burning, but only in reflection a raven, speaking backwards. A woman walking into fog and never returning, only to be seen again on the shore. 100 winters later, unchanged, a child being born with a spiral already drawn into her palm. You pull your hand back. The symbol fades, the humming stops. Matoi places the bowl in your hands. You look inside. The sliver of light has grown slightly. It flickers now, like it wants to become flame. You glance at her. What is it? Her eyes soften, something that was forgotten. She steps closer, and something that can't be anymore, Later, when the village has gone quiet again, and the stars resume their usual flicker, you walk alone to the lake's edge. You sit on the same worn dock, your feet dangling once more, but now with the bowl in your lap. You tilt it. The sliver of light slides toward the edge. You hold it steady and wait. The lake is still. Of course it is, but now you understand. Stillness isn't silence. It's listening. The bowl rests in your lap like it knows secrets you haven't yet earned. The lake stares back, glassy and expressionless, though you no longer believe that stillness means indifference. No, this lake is not a flat expanse of water. It is a living page, and something is waiting for you to write your part. You lift the bowl. Inside, the sliver of light continues to pulse, not just brighter, now aware, like it knows you're watching, or maybe it's watching you. You dip 2 fingers into the water, warm somehow. You lift a drop and let it fall back into the bowl. Nothing happens, and yet everything feels slightly shifted. Behind you, the trees do not rustle, but they lean forward. The stars seem to blink slower. Even the moon holds its breath. You stand carrying the bowl like it's both a blessing and a warning. You walk not toward the main shoreline this time, but toward the inlet. Yes, that inlet. The one that unravels maps, the one that unspools time. It is waiting for you. You pass the cedar with 17 names. The new carving is still embedded in its bark, glowing faintly beneath a layer of dew. One of the ribbons tied high on a branch has turned black overnight, not from fire, not from rot, just black, the color of endings that aren't quite dead. You do not stop. The inlet reveals itself only when you've decided to go too far. One moment there's forest, the next water. Not a lake exactly, but a fold in the earth where water forgets how to behave. You kneel at its edge. The bowl hums. The light inside flickers once, then splits. A second sliver appears, curling into being like smoke made solid. You place the bowl on a flat stone just at the water's edge, and the lake responds. A ripple, one, then another, then a shape. Not rising, not arriving, just there. A small canoe, alone, tethered to nothing. Its form is rough, unfinished, as though carved by someone remembering wood, only vaguely. It doesn't sit on the water so much as hover within it, like the difference between a dream and the memory of one. You do not move. The canoe drifts closer. No oars, no wake, just silent approach. Then from inside the bowl the slivers rise, both of them now lifted by some force you can't name. They float upward like twin feathers, then stop suspended in the air, and you hear it. The hum, low, singing, no words, but the melody. Oh, the melody. It's the one from the night the old women sang to the fire. The one from the lake bed vision. The one you haven't yet learned, but that has always known you. The slivers tremble, and then without warning shoot forward into the canoe. The vessel shudders, and then it changes, only slightly. The wood ripples, carvings form along its sides. You recognize them, the same symbols from the post of unfinished stories, the same ones carved into bark, and then a new symbol joins them, a spiral, cradled within a pair of hands. Yours. You reach forward. The canoe does not move. You place your hand on its edge, warm, not hot, not aggressive, just familiar. And suddenly you are in the canoe, not transported, not jolted, just there, sitting, balanced, waiting. The lake holds you gently, like a grandmother who's told this story 1,000 times and still wants to see how it ends. The canoe moves. Not by paddle, not by wind, just forward through the inlet, through the forest's watery ribs, past cattails that seem to nod in slow time. You drift until you reach the bend. Yes, that bend, the one the beaver warned you about, the place where stories forget themselves, but now it doesn't forget. Now it remembers you. The trees part, the sky pulses, and the water glows. Beneath the surface shapes move fish with hands, shadows with eyes, laughter without mouths. You do not flinch, you do not speak, you simply watch, and then you see it. Floating upward from the depths, a mask, two-faced, one side smiling, one side still. It rises, slowly turning as it climbs. You reach out, it touches your palm, and this time it chooses you. You do not wear it. You do not need to, because now the mask is part of the lake, and the lake is part of you. The canoe slows, stops. You are back at the shore, only it's not the one you left from. This one has reeds that hum when the wind moves, stones carved with names you've yet to speak, and footprints, one set, leading from the water into the forest. You follow. The footprints sink deep into the moss, soft and wide, not rushed but firm. Each one presses a little deeper than the last, like someone carrying something heavy, memory perhaps, or a name. You follow. The forest shifts around you as you walk, but not in any way you can point to. The trees look the same but older. The air smells the same but thicker. The light falls the same but slower. It's as if you've slipped sideways into the shadow of a memory the land itself forgot it was still holding. Birdsong returns, but it's not any bird you recognize. The call rises and falls in a pattern too precise to be animal. 5 notes, pause, 2 notes, silence, a signal, or maybe a lullaby. You stop when the path ends, because it does end, abruptly, into a clearing shaped like a bowl, hemmed in by boulders thick with lichen. And at the center of the clearing a pool, circular, still, not a ripple. It reflects only sky, though no sky is visible through the tree canopy above. You approach. Something shifts beneath your foot. You look down, a charm half buried in the moss. Copper, shaped like a turtle, not a turtle. The turtle, the same one that drifted through your story more than once, on a stone, in a canoe, in a pouch of offerings you never saw, opened. You lift it. It's warm, of course it is. You turn it over, and there, freshly etched into the back, a new symbol, one you've seen just once before. The fish swallowing the feather. You hold it tightly, then drop it gently into the pool. It does not sink. It floats, then spins once, twice, and vanishes. No ripple, just gone. You sit at the edge of the pool, cross-legged like a child who knows a story is about to begin, but hasn't yet decided whether they want to know how it ends. The water begins to shimmer. Then, like fog rising from a memory, you see images. Not visions, not quite.
Memories not your own. A woman lighting a fire inside a cave made of willow branches. A man carving names into birch bark and burying them near the roots of a sleeping cedar. A child drawing a canoe in the dust, one without paddlers, one that floats in 2 directions at once, and then your own face, but older, tired, but peaceful. Holding a feather, speaking into the mouth of a carved mask. The pool dims, the images vanish, but the knowledge remains. You aren't a collector of these stories. You're their echo. They found you because you hummed the same note they were born from. And now the lake has pressed you into its page. Behind you, something moves. You don't turn. Because the trees don't shift for just anyone. Only those who've become part of the story. A wind stirs your hair. You rise. The charm is no longer in your hand, but in its place, cupped gently in your palm, is a single feather, grey, plain. Except for a small twist near the shaft where something is woven into it. A single strand of human hair, your own. You do not question how. The lake rarely offers explanations, only continuity. You tuck the feather behind your ear. The clearing fades as you leave it. Yes, fades. Not in light or sound, but presence, as if it only exists when remembered. You return to the village by another path, one you've never seen before, but that your feet recognize. The children are gathered near the cedar. Matawi stands with them. When she sees you, she nods once. You walk the echo, she says. You don't ask how she knows. She smiles faintly. Now you carry it. She hands you a small pouch. Inside bark, not just any bark, birch. Coiled tightly, its inside covered in the same spiral symbols you've seen again and again. These are the names of those who walk that path before she says, "Speak them when the lake is too quiet." You glance toward the water. It's not quiet now. It hums, not with sound, with waiting. You nod because you understand. Stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something already did. The birch scroll is light in your hands, but it radiates a kind of weight that settles along your shoulders and spine. Not physical, historical, like you've been given a spine made of stories. The bark is soft, cured just right, with edges curled in a memory of flame, like it was warmed into shape rather than cut. The symbols inside are inked in soot and crushed berries, but they shimmer faintly when you turn them toward the sun. This spiral appears again. So do the missing circle mouths. But there are other shapes now too, ones that shift slightly as you look. A canoe that becomes a serpent if tilted. A wave that turns into a feather. A hand drawn backwards. You trace the largest symbol with your fingertip, and it tingles. Like the bark, recognizes you. Behind you, Matawa exhales. "You'll want to go to the tree again," she says, softly. You don't ask which tree, you know. You walk the now familiar path, the scroll tucked into your belt. The cedar, with 17 names, towers ahead, timeless and gnarled. Today it smells different, sweeter somehow, as if it's just been touched by lightning or laughter. At its base, a woman kneels. You don't recognize her at first. She looks young, no more than 20 winters, but her eyes betray her. They're full of deep water. She doesn't look up when you approach. "I tied the very first ribbon," she says. Her voice is calm, unhurried, but I never finished the knot. "You don't speak. I thought I was offering memory." She continues, hands brushing over the moss. "But I was really just trying to hide it." A long pause, and then she stands, and you realize she's taller than she first appeared. Not in body, in presence. She nods toward the scroll at your waist. "May I?" You hand it over. She unrolls it slowly. With her thumb she touches a name, a swirl of loops and dots that don't form any letter, but somehow feel like a name. She breathes it aloud. The air shifts. The tree creaks not from wind, but response. One of the older ribbons near the top tears loose and flutters down. It lands at your feet. She smiles. That one's done now. She hands you the scroll again and walks away. You want to ask her name, but the moment you think to ask, she's already gone. You bend down, pick up the fallen ribbon. It's soft, faded red. The knot in the middle is perfect. You tie it to your belt and keep walking. This time, the path doesn't take you back to the village. It takes you toward the cliffs, where the lake
meets the rock face in long, sighing waves. You find an old path down one cut into the side with steps shaped by generations of hesitant feet. At the base, there's a hollow in the rock, a shallow cave hidden unless the light hits just right. You step inside. The air is cool, wet, and full of echoes. Someone has been here before. Scratched into the stone are dozens of carvings deeper, sharper than the ones in bark. You run your hand across them. This is no casual doodling. This is ceremony. The same shapes repeat: canoe, spiral maskfish, swallowing feather tree with 17 roots, hand reaching into lake. Then one you haven't seen before, a drum. But instead of skin, its top is drawn as water. And underneath it is a small figure, curled, resting. You touch that one. The wall vibrates, not violently, just a soft shiver, as if the stone is remembering something it promised not to forget. You unroll the birch bark and match the symbols to the wall. Not all of them line up, but enough do. You understand now, this scroll is a key, or a map, or both. You reach into your pouch and take out a pinch of cedar ash from Mataui's fire. You smear it gently across the drum carving. The lines catch the ash, they darken. And then the echo returns. That sound, not drums played, drums beating themselves. A low, slow rhythm from within the cave walls. It's not loud, it's not even sound. It's pressure, memory, vibration. You close your eyes, and you're back there, on the lake bed, inside the cavern, feathers rising, light curling from stone. The Mishibizhia curled and waiting, but this time you hear something new. A voice, not the girl, not Matawi. The lake, speaking, 3 words, soft, endless. You are story. You open your eyes. The drum carving pulses once more, then stills. You step outside the cave. The waves look the same. The sky looks the same. But you don't, because now you carry proof. You walk back to the village slowly, carefully, because every step you take now leaves a memory behind. The sun is high when you return, casting sleepy gold across the village, but you feel no warmth. Not because it's cold, because you've brought something colder with you.
Not malevolent, just ancient. A presence that doesn't ask permission because it's already here, because it never left. The birch scroll remains at your side, its symbols quiet now as if resting between verses. You walk with care, nodding to those you pass. Most nod back, some glance at the scroll, others avoid your eyes entirely. They've seen that look before in the eyes of those who wander too close to memory. You stop at the carving post near the center of the village. The one with the two-faced mask etched into its side, the one children used to trace with their fingers when they thought no one was watching. A new mark has appeared since you last passed a spiral inside a set of antlers. You didn't carve it, but you've seen it in the cavern, etched along the Mishibizhu's resting stone. It hadn't meant anything then, but now it's part of your skin. You reach into your pouch and withdraw something new, the mask fragment, not the full face.
Just a shard of it, smiling side only. It wasn't in the scroll. You found it inside your mat this morning, placed where your head had rested, as if slipped in while you slept, as if it had always been there. You lift it. On the back, a groove shaped like a canoe paddle. A message, or an invitation. Behind you, Mataui's voice drifts through the quiet. You found the face, she says. You nod without turning. She steps beside you, looks at the shard. It's not broken, she says, it's unfinished. You glance at her, then who finishes it? She looks at the carving post. You follow her gaze and see something shifting at its base. A shape, slow and steady. You kneel. A mask. Whole this time, but made of clay, half-formed, still soft at the edges. You lift it carefully. It pulses faintly in your hands like bread rising under a thick cloth. "What is it?" you whisper. Matawi smiles. "It's waiting for you." She points toward the smokehouse. Inside, the fire is already lit. You smell the herbs burning, cedar, sweetgrass, tobacco. Not pungent, calming, like an old friend clearing their throat. You carry the clay mask inside and sit by the fire. The others arrive one by one. Elders, children, the woman who tied the first ribbon, the hunter with the twin scars. Even the beaver somehow perches at the doorway, blinking slowly. No one speaks. You reach into the flames and remove a small bowl of lake water, boiled not to purify but to wake. You dip your fingers and touch the clay mask. It shifts under your hand, not melting, forming. Symbols emerge slowly like breath writing itself on glass. Spirals, waves, eyes, hands, the circle with the missing piece. And then a new one, a canoe with two faces inside, one smiling, one watching. You glance up. Everyone is watching now, but no one is afraid. Matui kneels beside you. Her voice is low. "You've carved the net. Now you must cast it." You nod. She hands you a thread, long, black, unraveled from a cord worn by many wrists. You tie it to the mask, and suddenly you are not in the smokehouse, you are on the lake, again, but not standing, floating, inside the canoe, the one that carries itself, the one carved into your dreams, only now it carries others too. Faces you've known, faces you will know, all watching, all quiet, and then you reach down with the thread, cast it over the water. It unspools endlessly, coiling and stretching until it disappears beneath the surface. You wait. The water darkens, not ominous, ready. You feel a tug, not hard, not painful, just certain. You pull, and from beneath, something rises, not a creature, not a catch, a mask formed of water and memory. Identical to the clay one in your hands, it merges with the air. And for a moment you wear it, not on your face, but inside your breath. The lake breathes through you and speaks. We remember the ones who listened. You gasp, and you are back, the smokehouse. The clay mask now hardened, solid, real, complete. You set it gently on the ground. Matawi nods. "You cast the net," she says, and you pulled the first story back. Outside, the wind rises, but it brings no storm, only breath, only readiness, only echo. That night, you dream of bridges, not the wooden kind or the stone ones. No, these are made of mist, woven from breath and memory and moonlight. They stretch across the lake, so thin they look like smoke trails, but when you step onto one, it holds your weight. You walk across slowly barefoot, each footfall ringing like a drumbeat on hollow air. On the far side there are no trees, no village, only sky. A sky that curves down and becomes water again. You meet someone on the bridge. Yourself. But younger or older. It's hard to tell. They hold a bowl filled with feathers and names. They offer it to you. You take it, and the bridge dissolves beneath you. You wake without falling. The fire in your longhouse is cold, but the clay mask rests beside you, unchanged, solid. A new thread has been tied to it, copper, braided with bark. It wasn't there last night. You hold it, and the mask hums softly, not a sound, a vibration, an invitation. Outside, the village stirs with the kind of quiet usually reserved for the moments after thunder. You step into the dawn mist and head toward the lake.
the mask cradled in your arms like a sleeping animal. The sky is washed in early pinks and greys, and the water glows faintly, a mirror stretched thin. And across that mirror, a bridge, a real one, a mist-formed arc that curves low and wide, stretching from the inlet where stories vanish to the cedar grove where stories begin. You approach. No one else sees it, though many look directly at it. The bridge is not invisible. It's unquestionable. Like grief. Like time. You take your first step. The mist holds you. Your second step is lighter. The third, lighter still. Soon you're walking not on the bridge, but within it. The air thickens, but only around your ears. Sounds fade, no birds, no wind, no village chatter. Only your breath, and then behind it a melody. Not the hum, not the lake's song. This is different. A voice. Low, slow, neither male nor female, just worn. It sings a lullaby with no language, and yet you understand every word. When the stones are soft and the fish give feathers, when the water walks and the shadow speaks, the ones who listen will become the echoes, and the bridge will lead where memory leaks. You carry the mask forward. At the midpoint of the bridge, the mist clears slightly, and there, hovering just above the water's surface, is a canoe, suspended, empty, waiting. You step into it. The mist curls around the sides like a blanket. You place the mask at the front. The canoe does not move, not until you close your eyes and whisper a name. Not your own, someone else's, one of the names from the birch scroll. One of the ones tied to the old cedar. The canoe lurches forward, gently. The mist grows thicker again, but now within it, you see shapes, figures, not solid, just remembered. A child with a raven on her shoulder, an old man walking with no footprints, a woman holding a bowl full of stars. Each time the canoe glides past one, a string of thread trails behind it, tying to the bridge, to the mist, to the mask. You are weaving a net of passage, a path across the stillness, and when the canoe reaches the end of the bridge, the water opens. Just a little, enough for the mask to sink. You do not dive after it, you do not need to, because now the lake carries your face, and the bridge. The bridge is still there, even when you step off, even when the mist begins to clear, even when the village comes back into view, the bridge remains. Historians still argue whether such visions were hallucinations born of fasting sacred geometry or sheer desperation to believe that the lake gave something back. But you know better, because when you reach the shoreline, Manitou stands there, silent, smiling. She hands you a feather. This one is blue, tipped with ash. You don't ask what it means, because now you understand some bridges are real only for those who need them, and some names aren't carried by tongues but by footprints made of mist. The feather sits in your hand like it's waiting for instructions, or perhaps giving them. Blue with an ash-black tip, it catches the morning light in a way that makes it seem almost wet, like it's just come from somewhere deeper than air. You carry it carefully back to your long house, holding it upright, as if it might whisper directions if kept balanced. Inside, the fire has rekindled itself. No one's touched it, but it burns gently as though the village itself sensed your return and knew what needed to be warm again. You kneel beside it and touch the feather to the flame. Nothing burns. Instead, the fire folds slightly like it's bowing. You pull the feather back. The ash on its tip now glows faintly like coal, but cool to the touch. You set it in your pouch and it hums once, low, steady, insistent. Outside, the sky darkens not with storm but with intention. Clouds roll in, not overhead, but along the horizon, hugging the edge of the lake like a dream that's second-guessing itself. You head toward the inlet again. You know again, because everything here returns. Even you. When you arrive, the shoreline has changed. A new stone has surfaced from the mud, dark, flat, round. It sits just at the place where water meets earth, like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence no one wrote. You crouch beside it, etched into its surface, a spiral, not an old one. Fresh, still wet, drawn in. You lean closer. Water, no mere ink. Blue and black, you touch it. The mark shudders, and suddenly the stone whispers, not in words, in movement. It pulses once, then again, sending a ring of tiny ripples outward. You stand. And the inlet answers. From beneath the surface a bubble rises, then another, then a shape. Not a canoe this time, a spring. A perfect circle of water bubbling up from nowhere. The earth exhales, and the inlet breathes backward. Yes, backward. The water begins to pull inward toward the spring, swirling counter to the natural current. You step back instinctively, heart racing, not with fear, but with recognition. Mataui's words return when the water walks and the shadow speaks. You reach into your pouch and retrieve the feather again. It vibrates now, not in your hand, in your mind, like it's writing something on the back of your thoughts. You lower it toward the swirling spring. It's lifted from your fingers by nothing at all, floats for a moment, then drops into the center. The spring shudders and stops, the lake goes still, and the stone gone. You look around, no one else is here, not physically, but the trees are watching. The moss holds its breath, and somewhere deep in the earth something nods. You step closer to where the spring was. The mud now holds a mark, a spiral with 3 dots. You know that one. You saw it in the vision carved on the cavern wall. The child who drew the canoe that moved both directions. The memory of that story arrives fully, now not as dream or symbol, but as feeling. That child wasn't someone else, it was you. Not in this life, but in a life. You kneel, press your hand to the spiral, and the wind changes direction. It doesn't blow, it draws inward. Trees bend slightly toward you, leaves tilt. Even the mist creeps closer to the lake again, as if summoned. A presence arrives. Not with footsteps, not with voice, just wait. You know it. The Mishibiju, but not in its great curling form. Not this time. This time it is a pressure in your ribs, a current behind your eyes, a heaviness in your blood that reminds you you're standing on something that remembers more than you ever will. You whisper aloud, I'm listening. And the inlet answers. A shape rises from the water. A child, eyes wide, not human, not spirit. Somewhere between. She floats there, not treading, just being. She looks at you, doesn't smile, just exists. Then she speaks. Her voice is a trickle of water over stones, a whisper between reeds. You drew me backward. You nod. I didn't know what it meant. You do now. The child blinks once, then points toward the spiral on the ground. You must finish the drawing. She drifts backward into the mist, and with her the lake stills again. The mud beneath your hand cools. You rise and understand. This isn't about remembering what was. It's about completing what began. You return to the village carrying the unfinished spiral in your mind. It clings to the inside of your thoughts like something scratched behind bark, deep, deliberate, not quite visible, but undeniably there. The shape loops in your awareness, not closed, not open.
A question caught mid-breath. Back home, the longhouses look different now, not in structure, in posture, as if they've leaned subtly toward each other, huddling, listening, trading stories behind woven walls the way trees murmur through root systems. The air is thicker than it should be for the season, and you notice something perched on the roof beam of the smokehouse. An owl, or what should be an owl. At first, it's the right shape, round head, folded wings, the soft silhouette of a hunter that sees best in the dark. But as you step closer, your stomach tugs with a quiet wrongness. No feathers, none. Just smooth, pale skin pulled tight over a frame that's too still. It doesn't blink. It doesn't breathe. It watches. You stop. And the creature does something owls don't do. It opens its mouth and doesn't make a sound. Not silence. The absence of sound. Like something just took a bite out of the air and left nothing behind. You take a step back. And it's gone. Not flown, not dropped. Just gone. You look up. The roof is empty. Manitou appears beside you. Quiet as always. They come when the lake grows restless, she says. You turn. The owl. She shakes her head. That thing was not an owl. She walks toward the cedar and gestures for you to follow. There, tied to the lowest branch, is a fresh ribbon, black and white. A feather is woven into the knot. She unties it gently, hands it to you. This was left last night. No one saw who placed it. It wasn't there before the stars blinked. You hold it. It's heavier than a ribbon should be.
Weighted with memory. The knot is complex, woven backward, loops where there should be pulls, tension in the wrong places, a knot that remembers being untied. It's from her, you say. You don't know how you know. Manitou nods. She wants you to see. That evening, as the sun leaks orange and gold into the trees, you walk alone toward the old clay pit. The one the potters abandoned a generation ago after the last kiln cracked and refused to hold heat. The earth there is still soft, crumbly, and it smells like history. You kneel and press the knot into the clay. It leaves an impression not just of the ribbon but of the spiral. That same unfinished shape. You add the missing stroke, a gentle curve that completes the motion, and suddenly the clay beneath your fingers trembles. You pull back. The knot begins to smoke. Not burn, just steam. As though something cold had been buried too long and now finally remembers what it means to breathe. You watch.
Then from the center of the spiral, a crack, a small line in the clay. And from the crack, a sound, high, thin, like the whine of wind between teeth. It rises, then stops, and left behind in the mud, a single object, a bead, small, perfectly round, carved from bone. You lift it, turn it. On one side, a feather, on the other, an eye. You place it in your pouch. The air cools suddenly. You glance up. The owl thing is back, perched on a branch not 10 feet from you. Still, featureless, its mouth slightly open like it's forever waiting to finish a sentence. But now, in the center of its chest, the same spiral. Freshly carved, you rise. It doesn't flee, but it fades, not like mist, like memory. You walk home in the dark, no torch in hand. The stars provide enough. And just before you reach your door, you hear something behind you. Thump. You turn. No one. Just a single feather on the ground. Upright. Balancing perfectly on its tip. You stare at the feather. It stands there impossibly vertical, like it's listening, or praying, or remembering how to fall. It doesn't waver, not even when a breeze stirs the leaves or when you take a step closer. You don't touch it. You kneel beside it.
You match its stillness. And then softly you hum, not a tune you know, not a lullaby from childhood or a chant from the elders, just something the air has been whispering to you these past nights. Something the water started. Something the clay finished. A circular melody. No beginning, no end. As the notes drift into the night, the feather trembles once delicately and falls. Sideways, lands across the threshold of your longhouse like a seal. You pause, step over it. Inside everything is quiet but different. Your fire is burning again, low and steady. And on the mat where you sleep there's a shape, a bundle, wrapped in otter hide, tied with a cord of braided horsehair and cedar bark. You sit down slowly and place it in your lap. It smells like old water and iron. You untie the cord. The otter hide opens. Inside a small obsidian blade. A bone comb, its teeth worn from use. A bundle of dried seaweed salt still clinging to its edges, though the sea hasn't touched this land in 1,000 years. And at the bottom, tucked into a fold of hide,
A tooth, not human, not animal, not... Now, you lift it. It's heavy, oddly warm, shaped like a crescent moon bitten at both ends. Tiny carvings run along the root symbols, not unlike those on your birch scroll, but tighter, compressed, urgent. You don't know what it means, but your skin does. It knows the cold behind those curves, the pressure that comes from beneath. You set the tooth aside, reach for the blade, run a thumb along the edge. It's still sharp. Sharp enough to divide shadow from shadow. A whisper of movement draws your gaze to the door. Someone stands just outside, not moving. A silhouette, not quite man, not quite mist. You rise, step outside, they're gone. But where they stood, a patch of scorched earth. You touch it, still warm. As you press your palm into the blackened ground, your vision blurs, not from tears or fatigue, but from something shifting. When you blink, the village is gone, replaced by trees. Old ones, twisted, crowded.
and in front of you a mask, hanging from a low branch, different from the one you shaped. This one is made of bark, painted red, mouth open wide in an eternal gasp, eyes shut, not carved closed, grown that way. You reach up, touch it, and suddenly you're back. Your hand is still pressed to the scorched earth, but now your shadow is wearing the mask. You stare. It lifts one hand and waves, like you're leaving, or it is. Then it steps backward into the dark. Gone. You look down. The earth has cooled. The feather is gone. The bundle too, everything returned or taken. But in your pouch, something new. The tooth. You don't remember placing it there, but there it is. And beside it, the scroll, open on a new symbol, drawn while your eyes were elsewhere. The mask, worn by a shadow, held by a tree. You exhale and feel the stillness settle again. Not silence, stillness. The kind that holds breath, not because it's afraid, but because it's listening. And this time you don't turn away. You sit on your longhouse step and hum until the night forgets to end. Dawn creeps in like an apology. Not rushed, not grand, just slow fingers of gold peeling the darkness back one sliver at a time. You sit there on the step hunched, and still your voice long faded, but its echo still pinned to the silence like spider silk in morning dew. You haven't slept, not quite, but something in you has. Dreamed maybe, or shed its skin. Inside the fire has gone cold again, outside the mist has returned. But this time it doesn't press in, it waits. You rise slowly, legs stiff, shadow longer than the morning should allow. And for the first time you notice it moves with you perfectly again. Not early, not late, synchronized, like it remembers who it's meant to be. You reach into your pouch and pull out the tooth. The weight of it feels different now. Less foreign, less warning, more invitation. As you roll it in your palm, the carvings along its root seem to catch the light in new ways. Not gleaming, but absorbing. Drinking in the dawn. The symbols change as the sun moves. What were once zigzags now resemble paths. What looked like fish scales become waves. You turn it and the final carving comes into view. A door, just an outline. No handle, no hinges, but a distinct arch resting on the curve of the tooth like a threshold no one has crossed in generations. And beneath the door a single word etched so faintly it almost escapes you: return. You walk not toward the lake this time, but toward the old burial hill. The one people avoid in casual conversation. Not because of fear, but because of respect. It's where the bones are laid with words sewn into their shrouds. Where stories are buried, not to forget, but to feed. The path is overgrown, but your feet know it. You crest the hill and see the old circle of stones. 12 of them arranged in a spiral with a hollow center. You stand at its edge. In the middle, a patch of moss that looks like it's never been walked on. You step into the circle. No wind, no bird. Even the insects stop their rhythm. You kneel, press the tooth into the moss. It sinks slowly like the earth is tasting it. Then stops, and from beneath the moss shifts, lifts, opens. A hollow beneath the hill revealed not with violence, but invitation. A soft sigh escapes the soil. You descend, not far, just a few feet down through the roots and the memories. Inside a chamber, low, dark, breathing. The walls are lined with birch bark stitched into panels with river grass. On each panel symbols, spirals, yes, canoes, feathers. But others too, a tongue divided into two paths. A face cracked open like bark revealing sap. A hand with no fingers. You sit. The earth does not ask anything of you. It simply listens. You retrieve the scroll. Lay it flat on the ground. Beside it you place the mask you crafted. Then the bead with the eye and the feather. Then finally the tooth. Each one hums, faintly recognizing the others. A small current begins to run through the chamber. Not wind, not voice. Memory. From the walls, the panels begin to glow, just slightly, like embers realizing they're still alive. And then you see them. Figures. Not drawn, not carved, reflected. They move within the bark like fish behind fogged glass. One by one they step forward, not into the world, but into your story. You recognize the child from the lake, the woman with the bowl of stars, the shadow that wore your mask. They look at you. No smiles, no sadness, just presence. One steps forward, a tall figure, cloaked in water and reeds, hands the color of wet stone, eyes missing, just shadows where they should be. And it speaks not aloud, but through you. You carry what was forgotten. You inhale sharply. You sing the bones back to breath. You tremble, but don't break. And now a pause. The chamber holds its breath. You must bury the silence. The figure lifts one hand, touches your forehead. You close your eyes. See the bridge again, but this time it leads downward, into the lake, not across. You open your eyes, the chamber dims, the figures fade, and the only thing left, glowing, is you. Not brightly, just enough to be seen by memory. You climb out of the burial hill with dirt under your nails and a hum in your chest, like a drum that's been gently struck and keeps vibrating long after the ceremony ends.
The morning is warmer now, the mist has burned away, but you don't feel lighter, you feel anchored. The moss closes behind you slowly, as if it were never disturbed at all. Just another breath in the forest's long lungs. You look back once, not to be sure, just to remember. Then you walk, not toward the village, not toward the inlet. You walk toward the tree. Yes, the cedar. It's waiting, of course it is. You step into the clearing and find it covered in ribbons, dozens more than before. Some new, some old, some ghost thin and tangled together like forgotten prayers or promises that decided not to leave. But something is wrong. The tree is humming, not softly, not like the scroll, not like the feather. This is a low, tremulous growl, barely audible but full of warning. You step closer. One ribbon is twitching, a black one, fraying at the edges. You reach out. Matawi's voice stops you. Don't touch it. She steps into the clearing, her face drawn tight. That ribbon was tied too early, she says, before the story was ready. You glance at her. Who tied it? She doesn't answer, just gestures toward the base of the tree. You kneel. There tangled in the roots is a carving knife. Still warm. Still wet. With ink, number blood, old brown dry, but recent. Someone offered something before it was time. And now the cedar hums in warning. You reach into your pouch, take out the bone bead. It pulses faintly. You place it on the root beside the knife. The tree quiets. Slightly. The ribbon stops twitching. Matawi exhales. There, she says. You answered it. She kneels beside you, brushing moss from the roots. Then she leans close and whispers, there are stories beneath this island that even the lake avoids. You don't ask her to explain, because you know. You felt them, heard them, seen them shimmer behind bark and bubble up in backward springs. You sit with her for a while, the way people sit with storms, not to stop them, just to keep them company. Eventually Matawi stands. You'll need to go to the cave again, she says. You nod. Of course. Not everything reveals itself the first time. You walk alone. The trail there feels different now, more narrow, more precise. Like the land only just decided to allow it again. The mouth of the cave is still hidden behind the tumble of vines and shadow. You push through. Inside, still cool, still quiet, but this time watchful. The carvings on the wall glow faintly in the dim light. Not enough to illuminate, just enough to guide. You kneel again before the drum, carved in stone, the one whose skin was drawn with water. You place the scroll against it. Then the mask, then the tooth. Then you hesitate. There's something in your pouch you haven't touched. Since it appeared the obsidian blade, you pull it out. It gleams black as unfinished thought. You place it last. And then a breath from the wall, like the stone is inhaling. The drum's carved surface begins to shimmer, and for the first time you hear the beat. Not from inside, from behind, below. The stone begins to sink, not dissolve, not break, sink, revealing a hollow behind it, a tunnel, low, wet, pulsing with that same slow rhythm. You crawl in. The air is thick, smells like salt and smoke. The passage twists once, twice, then opens into a chamber wider than you expected. A pool sits at the center. Still, perfect, and on its surface not a reflection, a face. Yours, but older, eyes closed. Breathing slowly, you kneel at the edge, touch the water. The image doesn't ripple, but your hand comes back wet with ink, blue-black. Familiar, it drips down your wrist, soaking into your sleeve. You breathe in and hear the voice again, the lake's voice, but changed, deeper, tired. You found the silence. Now you must bury it. You whisper, how, and a shape rises from the pool. Not a creature, not a shadow, a boat, small, made of reeds and hair and ash. Inside it, a single item, a mask, your face. Eyes open this time, mouth closed. You take it, and you know the story isn't told by speaking, it's told by wearing. You slip the mask over your face, and the pool vanishes, not the water, the concept. Gone. And you are standing alone in the dark, but no longer afraid, because now you are the drum. The darkness doesn't smother you, it cradles you. Not an ending, a pocket. A slow exhale from the bones of the cave, wrapping around you like a grandmother's shawl, hand-woven from silence and time. You breathe in and the air tastes ancient, like iron, like wet wood, like someone else's memory left in a jar too long. The mask hugs your face, not tight, not stiff. It fits like it was carved from the inside out, like it knew you before you were born. You take a step forward. There's no tunnel anymore, just space. Deep, quiet space. The walls have faded into suggestion, the floor into trust. You don't fall, you don't float. You walk, soundless yet certain. And then from far, far ahead, a rhythm begins, not the heartbeat of the cave, not the hum of the lake. A new rhythm. Fast, sharp, irregular. Like sticks snapping underwater, like a language being spoken by something with no tongue. You follow it. As you move, the mask shifts, not physically but perceptually. You start seeing through the eyes of others. The child from the inlet. The woman in the birch chamber. The beaver from your dream, yes, even him. All of them overlapping like layers of transparent parchment. The world flickers between perspectives. You blink. And when your eyes open, you are outside. But the world is wrong. The lake is gone. In its place, a bowl of charred ash. Trees stand naked, scorched at the root. The air is thick and dry, and overhead the sky is red. Not crimson, not fire, just wrong. You're not in the past or the future. You're in the memory of what almost happened. The lake's fear, the forest's warning, the world without listening. You walk across the ashen earth, the crunch beneath your feet echoing too loud. The mask remains on your face, unburned, unbothered. In fact, it seems to guide you toward the center. There, standing amidst the remains of trees, a figure, not one you know, not one you want to know. Tall, wrapped in something that moves like fire, but sounds like breathing. No face, just a hollow. Inside that hollow, a spiral. Spinning too fast, too sharp. It doesn't hum, it cuts. Your bones ache in its presence. You approach, because there is no other direction. The figure lifts one arm, points behind you, you turn, and there, etched into the sky like a wound, is a door. The same one carved into the tooth, just hanging, waiting. The figure speaks without sound, but the meaning cuts into your ribs like flint. Close it. You stare at the door. It pulses. A single thread of mist spills from its edge, trailing toward the ground, like a nerve that's never been numbed. You walk toward it. The closer you get, the more your mask begins to tighten.
Not painfully, just insistently, as if it's bracing itself. You reach the door, there's no handle, just that single word etched into the arch, return. You place your hand against it. It resists, just once, then opens inward, but there's no inside. Only the lake, whole, real, blue and still and waiting. You step through, fall gently, no splash, just home. You land in shallow water, the reeds parting around you, like they remember your footfalls. The mask dissolves, slips off your face like a breath exhaled. You turn. The door is gone, replaced by mist. The figure gone too, but the ash remains in your bones as a reminder. You walk back towards shore, your pouch still at your side, lighter but not empty. Inside the bead, the scroll, the comb, the blade, and something new. A strip of red fabric, damp and warm, folded into the shape of a spiral. You don't know when it was placed there, you don't need to. You step onto dry ground.
And the lake behind you sings, not loudly, not in words, just enough to say, "We're still here." The lake's song lingers in your ears long after you step ashore, like a lullaby you heard once in a dream and have been humming under your breath ever since. You don't hum it aloud now, you don't need to. It hums through you. You pause at the waterline just for a breath, to look back not at the water, but at the absence where the door once was. Nothing remains. Not a ripple, not a glint, but your shadow. It stretches toward the lake again. This time when it waves, you wave back, then you walk. The path into the woods is familiar, but it's changed again. The trees are taller or quieter, or maybe it's you who walks softer now. You notice the birds. They've returned not in chorus, but in conversation. 2 at a time. One asking, one answering. Their song sounds vaguely like a spiral turned into sound. At the edge of the cedar grove, Manitou waits. She sits cross-legged beside the tree, carving something into bark with a bone comb. The image, half finished, appears to be a canoe with antlers and wings. It shouldn't make sense, and yet it does. Deeply. She looks up as you approach, doesn't speak. You sit beside her, back against the tree. She finishes her carving and places the comb into a pouch at her hip. Then finally, softly, she speaks. "Did you bury it?" You nod. She smiles, tired and wide-eyed. "Good." The silence was getting loud. She pulls something from her belt, a ribbon, blue and black with a single bead sewn into its center. Not the eye bead you found before. A different one, etched with a feather and what looks like a tiny doorway. She ties it around your wrist. "You'll need that where you're going," she says. You blink. "Where am I going?" She stands and shrugs, back, forward, deeper. And with that she walks away, because Manitou never explains more than she has to. You stand and turn to the tree. The cedar hums gently now, not warning, welcoming. At its base is a new stone, flat, unmarked. You kneel and retrieve the blade from your pouch, obsidian sharp as forgetting. You press the tip to the stone and begin to carve not words, shapes, a spiral, a mask, a child in a canoe facing 2 ways. You carve slowly, deliberately. This is no journal, this is an echo. When you finish, you place the blade beside the stone. You won't need it anymore. The silence is buried. Now it's time to remember. You walk back toward the village, but the path takes you a new way upward toward a cliff you've never stood on before. At the edge is a tall, thin post, carved with names you don't know, all spiraling downward like rain etched into wood. You press your palm against it. It feels warm. And from behind it, someone approaches, the woman who tied the first ribbon. Only now she's older, much older, hair silver, eyes wet. "You brought it back," she whispers. You don't ask what, because you already know. The mask, the spiral, the door, the balance. She steps beside you and hands you a small pouch. Inside, cedar ash and birch bark curls. "Scatter it," she says, nodding toward the wind. You open the pouch, and the wind waits. Yes, it waits. Not blowing until you raise your hand. And when you do, it lifts the ash and bark into the sky like confetti tossed into ceremony. The flakes spiral upward, dancing in lazy circles before disappearing into the sun. And the sun, it flickers once, not a blink, a bow, as if the sky itself is saying thank you. You smile. For the first time, the smile doesn't feel borrowed. You sit on the edge of the cliff feet, dangling wind curling around your ankles like an affectionate cat. The lake stretches far and quiet beneath you. Still, but no longer silent. Because silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the weight of listening. And tonight, the whole island is listening back. The wind at the cliff's edge carries a strange scent today. 1 part cedar smoke, 1 part moss after rain, and something else. Something like old feathers left too long in a drawer. It smells like stories. You sit there until the sun slips low, dangling orange threads across the lake, like a careless weaver. The shadows grow long, slow stretched, like they're not quite sure where to end. Eventually, you rise, your shadow rises with you. Together you descend the ridge path, feet brushing through dry ferns and soft needles. When you reach the clearing near the burial hill, you find the others waiting. Not all at once, not loudly. They simply appear one by one, stepping from between trees, from behind mist, from the folds of your own memory. No one speaks. Each holds something, a ribbon, a carved bead, a fish scale pouch, a feather painted with ash. Small things. Silent offerings. Matawi is already seated in the center. A circle of stones surrounds her. Not the burial stones these are new. Still wet with carved marks. Symbols you recognize, others you don't. You join the circle and one by one the others kneel beside you. She nods toward you. Begin. You don't ask what. You know. You untie the blue and black ribbon from your wrist and place it at the center of the stones. Then the woman with silver hair places her pouch of cedar ash beside it. Then another places a bead, and another a mask fragment. Soon the center fills not with objects, but with intention. Memory made tangible. When the last person places their offering, a small mirror face down, the wind hushes. Matawi breathes deep and begins to hum. That same strange melody. Circular, unfinished, familiar. You join her, then others. The sound rises like mist, not loud, just full. The lake hums back. You feel it beneath the earth behind your bones. And then the fire begins. Not struck, not lit, just appears. A single flicker in the center of the stones, rising from the offerings themselves. They do not burn, they glow. One by one the items rise into the fire, hovering just above the flame. They do not turn to ash. They turn to story. Each one bursts softly like a seed pod in slow wind, releasing spirals of smoke etched with images. You see the canoe with two faces, the cave and its breathing wall, the girl with no feet who floats above the inlet, the red mask that wore your shadow, the owl that opened silence instead of wings. Each scene flickers, then drifts upward, disappearing into the canopy, until only one object remains in the fire, the obsidian blade. It hovers last, heavy, sharp, still humming. Matawi nods toward you. You stand and step into the circle. The blade tilts toward you. You hold out your hand. It lowers gently, cold as first breath. And you cut the ribbon you tied at the cedar days ago. It severs with a whisper. The fire surges once, then sighs out. Ash settles. Smoke vanishes. The circle stills. No one moves. Matawi finally speaks. It is finished. You exhale and sit. Someone starts humming again, a different tune this time, older, wiser, sleepier. The others rise one by one and return to the forest, the lake, the longhouses, but you remain. Matawi hands you a final object, a stone, flat, carved with a spiral. On the back, a fingerprint, yours. I found it in the lake, she says, before you ever arrived. You take it, it hums, you place it in your pouch. And finally, at long last, the pouch feels full. No more teeth, no more combs, no more whispers. Only story, only you, only what comes next. The stars arrive without ceremony. The lake smooths itself again. And from the trees an owl calls. But this time, a real one. Night spreads over Manitou like ink, dropped into still water. Slow shore inevitable. The stars do not twinkle. They glow heavy with old meaning, like they've watched 1,000 ceremonies and know exactly when to speak and when to stay silent. You walk. Not with purpose, with permission. The land no longer resists your footsteps. It doesn't test you. It doesn't whisper warnings. It just opens like a palm turned upward. An invitation, or a farewell, or maybe both. You drift toward the northern edge of the island where the forest thins and the sky grows wider. There a field breathes under moonlight soft grass, taller than you remember, studded with tiny flowers that only bloom in darkness, silver-petaled, wide-eyed. In the center of the field, a circle, not of stone, not of trees, of shadows, 12 of them spaced evenly facing inward. You step closer and realize they're yours. 12 echoes of your own self, each one from a different moment, when you wore the mask, when you stepped into the canoe, when you carved the spiral, when you first arrived. Each shadow holds a different posture. One kneels, one dances, one cries, one stares at the sky. They are not memories, they are reminders. Proof that you were not just a traveler. Through this story you became it. You step into the circle and the shadows shift, slowly collapsing inward, like petals closing around a seed. You stand still as they merge. One by one, each shadow walks into you, not violently, softly, like a breath returning to lungs. When the last one folds in, you feel it, not as a burden, as wholeness. The wind rustles the grass, and then something moves in the center of the circle. A figure, familiar, the girl from the lake. But she's older now, not aged, complete. She holds out her hand, palm open, in it a shell. Carved into the inner curve is your own face, but not as you are, as you could have been had you never listened. You take it gently, hold it to your ear, and you don't hear the ocean. You hear names, names of those who buried their stories in the roots, names of those who sank their songs in the lake, names of those who were forgotten until now. You whisper them one by one, and each time a flower in the field opens. Soon the grass glows faintly with silver light like a sky flipped upside down. The girl nods, then vanishes. No sound, no smoke, just gone. You remain, kneeling in the field of star flowers, the shell still warm in your hand. You look up. The moon is no longer alone. A spiral of stars has emerged around it, faint, glowing, shifting slowly, as though the sky itself is echoing you now. You lie down in the grass. The flowers curl around you, gentle as lullabies. You close your eyes, not from sleep, from arrival. You have become stillness, not absence, presence held quietly, and the land finally rests with you. The dawn is shy this time. It waits longer behind the tree line, letting the stars linger, letting the mist rise first. It doesn't rush you. You wake slowly, body wrapped in the hush of the field. The silver-petaled flowers have closed around you, tiny guardians of dreams now folded in the dew. Your hands are warm. Your pouch hums faintly against your side, not insistent, reassuring. You sit up. The air tastes new. The island has shifted again, not physically, not visibly, but something underneath some rhythm has finally clicked into place. You rise and begin walking barefoot across the field. The grass parts without resistance. Each step is met with stillness, as though the land recognizes the weight you now carry, not as a burden, but as a key. At the edge of the field you find the old path again, but this time it's different. Not overgrown, not hidden, just straight. The trees form a gentle tunnel, their limbs braided above you leaves, murmuring low songs about endings that are actually beginnings in disguise. You follow it. Along the way you pass old markers, the smokehouse, the carving post, the hollow where the owl once stood. Each place looks the same but feels emptied, not vacant, satisfied. You reach the cedar tree. Its branches are heavy with ribbons now, some faded, some bright, all still. Matawi stands beneath it, holding a small bundle wrapped in otter hide. You already know what's inside: the blade, the comb, the bead, the scroll. She smiles. We gather what returns. You kneel. She places the bundle in your hands. It's lighter than it should be. You untie the cord and open it slowly. Inside is a single ribbon, white, untied. Its fabric blank, waiting. You glance up. She's gone, but you're not surprised. You stand and face the cedar. Reach up. Tie the new ribbon low near the root. Not above the others. Below. A foundation, not a flag. The tree hums faintly like a long-held breath. Finally exhaled. You step back. Behind you, the lake glints through the trees, still and quiet. But not the same lake you first saw. Not exactly. This one is listening. This one is speaking. You return to the shoreline one last time. The canoe is there. Yours. Not carved. Not summoned. Just waiting. Inside it, the mask you shaped, resting on the seat like a sleeping face. You place the bundle beside it, slide into the boat and push off with your foot. The water parts smoothly, no resistance. As you drift, the mist curls gently but doesn't obscure. Instead, it opens paths, memories, strung out across water. You pass the inlet where the child once hovered. The reeds part. You pass the spring that flowed backward. The surface twitches, then calms. You pass the submerged cavern. Bubbles rise, once 3 of them. Then nothing. And ahead a shape. Low, wide, a small island that wasn't there before. Crowned by a single tree. Leafless, but not dead. Its bark is etched with a spiral, no longer turning. Complete. You land. Step onto the soft sand. It holds you. You place the mask at the base of the tree, then the bundle, then finally the shell. The carved image of who you might have been, now set gently against the roots. The wind rises slightly. You sit down beside it all. You hum a new song, and the lake hums back. You remain on the island until the sky forgets what color it's supposed to be. The sun lingers, a soft yolk resting in a cracked bowl of clouds. The lake mirrors it all, rippling just enough to let the reflection breathe. You sit at the base of the spiral-marked tree, your legs tucked under you, hands resting in your lap. You're not tired, not really, but you feel settled. The bundle beside you no longer hums, the mask has stopped whispering, and the shell no longer echoes names. It's not silence, it's completion. Something shifts in the branches above. You glance up. No owl, no shadow. Just a feather drifting down a white one tipped with soot. It lands beside you and stays upright in the sand. Another offering, or a signature. You take the ribbon you tied to the cedar and untie one small thread from its edge. Wrap it gently around the base of the feather. You don't know why, but the act feels true. The tree watches, the lake listens, and from somewhere within the earth, the buried silence exhales. Not a ghost, not a threat, just a memory properly placed. You stand and gather what remains of the bundle. Only one object is left, the comb, bone-worn teeth uneven. You hold it in both hands and run your thumb along its edge. It no longer feels like a tool. It feels like a key. You walk slowly to the water's edge and wade in. The comb hums faintly as the ripples curl around your knees, then your hips, then your chest. You lower yourself in and let the lake hold you, just for a while. You don't dive, you don't drift, you float. Your body becomes buoyant with memory, heavy with rest. And beneath the surface, just for a heartbeat, you see them all. The child, the mask wearer, the woman with the bowl, the owl with no name, the shadow that waved. They're not gone, they're not waiting, they're carried. Inside you now, not haunting, not demanding, just present. The water begins to cool. A sign, you return to shore, dripping and silent. The tree leans ever so slightly in the wind. You walk past it, stepping into the mist as it thickens warm and close. The world softens, the hum fades. The island does not follow, but it watches. It always watches. You step through the last tendril of fog and return to your path. Not the one you came from, not exactly a new one. And as your feet press into the soil, a final realization settles quietly across your shoulders. There are no endings, only well-placed spirals. And now, dear listener, rest your thoughts. The shadows have curled back into the cedars and the water has smoothed into glass. The ribbon flutters faintly on the wind, its spirals soft and satisfied. The hush around Lake Manitou is no longer expectant, it is full. Let your breath slow now, longer on the exhale. Let the story loosen its grip. The figures that drifted in and out of your path, those cloaked in mist and silence, they've taken their places in memory, not to haunt you, but to remind you you've walked through a tale not written in ink, but in footsteps in clay, in wind, that turned its ear to listen. The mask rests now at the lake's bottom among pebbles and feathers and time. The door is closed, but the spiral continues, always continues, because there are stories still waiting for you, but not tonight. Tonight, the lake is quiet. Tonight, you are the canoe, drifting without oar, without anchor, held, cradled, unfolded. Let the stars blink slower now. Let the wind sigh a lullaby into the reeds. You have walked far enough. Sleep now, not to escape, but to return. Return to yourself. Return to the stillness. Return to the hum beneath everything that ever mattered. Sleep. 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 End of script. Sweet dreams.